Good morning, everyone. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is Jamal Thomas Morning Show. I hope you guys are doing well this morning. I'm not going to be a geopolitical chauvinist, whether it's morning, evening, wherever you are. If you are under this voice, you have my deepest appreciation for being under this voice. And so I would just say good day to you. Interesting news that has come out. So I'm going to start here. But there's other news that we have to hit that's more important than this. But this is interesting just because it's America, right? So Trump, under pressure, under continued pressure hasn't let up, was asked this. And you can only guess why he was asked this. You don't have to guess for long because I'm going to show you immediately after. And by the way, he's lying here.
The Attorney General briefed you on the DOJ and FBI review, the findings of that review. The Attorney General briefed you on that.
What? On the
DOJ and FBI
on what?
review.
On what subject?
Epstein.
Okay.
On Epstein, of the review of the files. Attorney General Pam Bondi.
A very quick briefing.
Did she tell you, what did she tell you about the review? And specifically, did she tell you at all that your name appeared in the file?
No. She's given us just a very quick briefing. And in terms of the credibility of the different things that they've seen, and I would say that, these files were made up by Comey, they were made up by Obama, they were made up by the Biden, we went through years of that with the Russia.
Can't even get it out. And look at her when he says this. It's a micro expression, but if you look at it, you can see it.
In terms of the credibility of the different things that they've seen, and I would say that, these files were made up by Comey.
Bam, right there. That's a tell. That's a tell. She's looking at him the entire time. She's watching him the entire time, just staring up at him in a very practiced way. And the moment that he said these files are made up by, her face drops. She looks down, and you can tell that at that point, it's too much for her. It's too much for her. Even if you can imagine the amount of lies that she has to tell on a daily basis for Donald Trump. And even this is too much. It's too Herculean. She doesn't have superpowers, meaning there are limits to what she can accept in regards to what Donald Trump is putting out there. She knows he is lying through his teeth, which is the reason why her face and head drops. It's a micro expression. If she was sitting in an interrogation room, the cops would have noticed that. They would have marked it down, say head dropped, a change in pose, change in posture. It's a twitch. It's something different than what she was doing prior. Why is she doing something different? Is it just so happens she's doing something different because Donald Trump is lying through his teeth? Maybe, probably, yeah. And it lies so ludicrous, considering the reporting, that she just can't take it. She just breaks down, and her body just relents. I'll play it out. Let him finish lying.
A very quick briefing.
Did she tell you, what did she tell you about the review? And specifically, did she tell you at all that your name appeared in the file?
No. She's given us just a very quick briefing. And in terms of the credibility of the different things that they've seen, and I would say that, these files were made up by Comey, they were made up by Obama, they were made up by the Biden, we went through years of that with the Russia hoax, with all of the different things that we had to go through. We've gone through years of it, but she's handled it very well, and it's going to be up to her. Whatever she thinks is credible, she should release. Yeah.
On Texas.
And if you notice, she immediately went back to the exact same position when Trump finished lying. I mean, he went into deflection, but the moment it just was too much for her at the moment. Right, I'm supposed to be doing this. I'm supposed to be looking at him while he's lying through his teeth. Why do I say Trump is lying through his teeth? Because reporting out of the Wall Street Journal and other outlets at this point, I suppose have corroborated it, is that Pam Bondi did tell Trump that he was in the Epstein files. She did tell him. Told him in advance. He knew. which I strongly suspect is part of the reason why those files aren't being released. Not just Trump, several people are in those files. Now, the catch is, if your name is Donald Trump and you are friends with an apex pedophile, is it suggestive if it's released, especially in the context to which it's released? And, the amount of how frequent he finds himself in those files. So Trump, Bondi, apparently took the point of view, let's just pretend they don't exist. Let's pretend there's no spoon. Hey, I don't even know who Epstein is. In jail? What jail? What do you mean jail? I don't even know what a jail is. Like, that seems to have been where they went with this, which was frankly absurd. Nobody was going to accept that. Nobody was going to believe that. And after you spend, and your supporters spend years going at this issue, you can't get into office and then back away from the issue as if there is no issue. Look, I agree with Margaret Kimberly that the main issue for this is not being discussed. The main rationale for what's problematic about it is not being discussed. What's problematic about it is that you have a foreign intelligence service that was effectively using Epstein to feed children to grown men, and then using that for leverage on those grown men. You have several problems here, right? A, you're feeding kids to men, pedophiles. It's like Chris Hansen catching pedophiles. It's like, hey, I thought I was talking to a 13-year-old. No, you're talking to me. I'm Chris Hansen. It's time for me to take your ass to jail. But it's not that. It's on a much grander and wider scale, with Intel providing some level of protection as he went about doing this year after year after year after year. And with Donald Trump being close friends with him for decades. That's not good. That's pretty bad. And not just pretty bad, criminal on a level that is breathtaking. To make it even worse, the fact that your name is strewn through it, and that there are other people's names that are strewn through it, the secondary question becomes, okay, what level of influence is being applied to these people? What do I mean by that? Netanyahu used leverage against Bill Clinton, or at the very least tried to. Netanyahu apparently had tapes of Bill Clinton talking very dirty to Monica Lewinsky. Bill Clinton didn't want those tapes out. Netanyahu wanted something from Bill Clinton. And during the conversation with Bill Clinton, introduced that, hey, I got rid of the tapes. Now, you're in a presidential meeting. Why are you bringing up these tapes at all? So this idea that leverage is not applied is nonsense. Of course, if they are getting that data or that information, then they're going to use that information, because that's why they got it in the first place. I hope you get my point. It's this idea that they're just getting videos for the sake of videos. It's nonsense. If indeed this is what it seems like it is, then it behooves us to know who is in those files, who is compromised, who are they applying leverage to or have the potential to apply leverage to, and in any way does that affect our politics? It's a big deal. It's not, insignificant. The other issue that has come out, which I'm trying to find the Ryan, I'll find his name. The other issue that has come out that I got to be honest with you, I saw this at the last minute, so I didn't have the entire time to do an entire rundown of it. DD Geopolitics, Sarah Bils, she's going to be on later today. She may be able to give us a heads up about what's going on. Carl Jha may be able to give us a heads up about what's going on. But suffice to say, it sounds like Cambodia and Thailand are at war. It sounds like Cambodia and Thailand are at war. So these are Thai fighters taking cover from incoming from the Cambodian Air Force. Right here, this. And I said to myself, what the hell? What the hell? I got to be honest, I didn't know anything about this issue. it apparently hit the fan in full force. Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. In response, because of course there's always a response, right? I believe this was in response. Let me make sure. I want to verify the footage first. Cambodia. Okay. In response, TIE fighters. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Also Cambodia. Setting the forest on fire. Oh, that's loud. Setting the forest on fire. Yeah, this, and firing heavy machine gun at TIE fighters. That loud rattles machine gun. From my understanding, and the little, again, understanding that I have of this is over a colonial border issue that was undecided, or at the very least, there was a point of view on the issue, but Thailand never accepted it because of one of the temples that was in question. Hopefully, Carl Jha, who knows this region extraordinarily well, Sarah Bils, who knows this region extraordinarily well, they may be able to give us a rundown on how this happened, why this happened, and why do they seemingly, or are they seemingly now at some kind of shooting and hot war. From my understanding, it kicked off when I believe it was a Cambodian fighter stepped on a landmine, at which point they responded with force. It's just wild, just completely wild. I got to be honest with you, I don't get the sense. So RKM, U.S. has approved the use of F-16 of the Thai Air Force to strike. Oh God, okay, I'm not even reading that. I will get more details from this from Carl Jha. He would know more about this than I will. And so I am not going to speculate. And I don't like coming up with this stuff at the last minute. It is weird, though, that all of these wars are effectively taking place around Chinese or Russian areas. I mean, if you think about it, Thailand, Indonesia, is that right? No, Thailand, Cambodia, this is areas near China. Russia, Ukraine, obviously, this is involving Russia. India, Pakistan, this is obviously around near China. It just seems like there's a theme that is coming up, that is happening over and over and over again, which, again, coincidences do happen, but I don't trust coincidences. Not like that. Not like that. One of the other stories that we should hit before Carl Jha comes on, the delegation from the Russia-Ukraine meeting that took place. So as you know, Pambani is now as what? Let me read this before I go to the thing. It says, Jamal, do you know that Pam Bondi is now as a victim in the Epstein files now? Picture of a 12, 13-year-old girl sitting on Trump, looks like her sister. I mean, but Pam Bondi, again, is called a beautiful liar because she's very attractive. In fact, Donald Trump just surrounds himself with very beautiful women in general. So that's not really saying much. All of them are kind of beautiful liars. Obviously, Levitt had a limit to the degree of lying that she could take, as depicted in that video that I showed earlier. But white woman, blonde hair. Okay. It's like, hey, there's a 13-year-old white woman with blonde hair sitting on Donald Trump's lap. Okay, that could be anybody. that's not really like, hey, that's clearly Pam Bondi. No, that could be anybody. That could be anybody. But I appreciate your comment. But that could be anybody. Let's talk about the negotiations, in quotes. As you know, Ukraine is losing Petrovsk. That is about to fall. Russia seems to have created a wedge in it, not to mention pincers on top or around it. That does not seem like it's going to last much longer. Petrovsk is a big deal in regards to logistics, or at the very least it was. You have a lack of weapons, a lack of manpower, a lack of many desertions. In fact, some of the reporting that was coming out was saying that because they were just given incorrect data, that they were losing territory. Because if you're giving the military intelligence, hey, we have 20,000 men here and you have 5. Okay, well, how do you plan for that? And so you have Russia blowing up Patriot missiles, or not just missiles, but the batteries themselves. You have an inability to supply those batteries. I think Germany is not going to be able to get it till 2026, maybe a month or earlier, or so earlier. And you have Russia firing 500 drones on any random day. It could be a Tuesday, 500, 700 drones. That is problematic. Even if Ukraine can get a random hit in every so often, fair enough. The context of the battle lines and the context of the war is inexorable. As Mark points out, a lava flow. And not just the lava flow, a lava flow going downhill where it seems to get faster and faster with them taking more and more territory year after year, especially in Petrovsk. Petrovsk was a clear indication that the war of attrition was taking its toll. And they did not have the capability of, let's say, maintaining their battle lines in that area, in which case Russia was able to intervene and invade. So this is obviously not great for Ukraine. This is an utter and complete disaster from the Ukrainian standpoint. And they, not to mention Donald Trump is pushing them to negotiate. It's not like they have a will entirely of their own, at least not entirely. And so they go into negotiations. Now, Zelensky put limits on what they could negotiate. We are doing humanitarian negotiations, so we're going to trade soldiers. There was supposed to be talk about trading the dead, and there was supposed to be talk about a meeting between Putin and Zelensky. Now, I don't know why Zelensky would want to sit across from Putin and crap himself. I have no idea why he wants to do that. And as a ploy or something, what is the point? If we haven't decided on what we're going to do, what is the point? I don't even consider you to be legitimate. So what is the point? All of this stuff keeps going back to what is the point? This is a propaganda exercise that nobody really cares about in this case. So obviously not much was going to get accomplished given the limits. What Russia wanted is obvious. They've been very consistent all the way through about what they want to talk about and what they want to get accomplished. Well, these aren't things that the Ukrainian military has been decimated to the point yet where they're willing to countenance. Now, again, I point out that part of my reason for thinking that these protests that are taking place in Kiev have a lot to do with this, that they want to get certain things accomplished, meaning the Trump administration. They believe that there may be some leeway in the context of Putin's demands, but they don't believe that any of that stuff can get accomplished with Zelensky being in office. These protests are weird. They are very bizarre. The protests continue, by the way. And so, you send him to negotiate. He's not negotiating in good faith. He's not negotiating in good faith. And you think to yourself, we need to get rid of him. And you get a coordinated political strike on Zelensky. Now, some people would say he is not long for this world. He has played his role, and the U.S. is now tired of playing with this toy and is now moving to another toy. And I still say, I don't know who they would bring in that would be more amenable to be able to, let's say, accept certain terms. I mean, keep in mind, you have a bunch of neo-Nazis who are lunatics who've been killing people in the streets when they need to. And so the person who's going to sign some kind of documentation that they're going to end the war, or at the very least come up with a ceasefire, that guy may have a very short life, especially if it's no weapons, no troops, no et cetera, meaning you're accepting that ceasefire along Russian lines. that person may have a very, 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 very short life. So I don't know who that guy would be. I know Seymour Hersh is saying it's Zelensky, but again, I don't know why Seymour Hersh is picking Zelensky out of a bin. I don't know. I would say this though. It is very strange to me that this is the issue that Ukraine used to kick off an issue of national sovereignty. Yes, it is very self-serving for Zelensky to go after these networks, especially when those organizations, NABU and SAPO, was going after Zelensky for investigations. Agreed. The rationale that the Russians had invaded seems absurd to me, but okay. But they're not entirely wrong. Like, these organizations were created after the government of Ukraine had collapsed, meaning after the overthrow of the government in 2014. These governments were effectively being controlled by the United States. They did a crappy job, obviously, because Ukraine remained in the most corrupt country on the planet in the history of planets or the history of countries. And so they seemingly have done a very crappy job, but their job and their objective was control, to be able to set a certain narrative in order to push events in a particular direction. And so for Zelensky to go after them, if he's indeed going after them in order to solidify his political control and power base, well, that is on some level, giving some level of sovereignty back to Ukraine, even if it is in an authoritarian slant. And even the authoritarian slant thing is kind of weird. You lost control of your government in 2014. At that point, it was a dictatorship. I mean, you could say it was a modest dictatorship. Fair enough. But if you think about it, if you get rid of certain political parties that you don't like, if you put your political opponents in jail, if you go after half of the country and don't allow representation from that half of the country, okay, then you've isolated your political space to a bunch of banderites. That's not a democracy. That's something else. I hope you get my point. So, Klitschko can be like, well, this feels like it's going authoritarian. Dude, you were already there. You are a fish in water because you are part of the banderites that can participate. You are now complaining because you believe that your participation ability has gotten less. But let's be very clear, you're a fish in water, and a bunch of Nazi water at that believe that up to the point, hey, I could engage into politics. Well, the United States was very clear that they didn't want you. They said as much on that tape with Jeffrey, Pyatt, where the FDEU tape with Victoria Nuland, Klitschko's name came up. And Klitschko was like, yeah, he's not ready. You were denied. You were found lacking. You were weighed in the balance and found wanting. So there's that. And the fact that you were weighed in the balance and found wanting should get across that this notion of you having a democracy is nonsense. Complete nonsense. And as I said, they're still going. The protests are still going. I do not know how long they're going to go. There were, I think they said 5,000, give or take. They were there. And yeah, I mean, you would need those to grow to get to the point where it is somewhat dangerous for the regime. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I don't think 5,000 is anywhere near enough to pressure the regime to leave. So there's that. If you get a situation where the 5,000 becomes a template and day after day after day, they swell and they grow and they keep going, okay, then maybe you have legs. This is a nice batch, but it's not enough to overthrow a government, especially not in a color revolution. Yeah. So it's funny to me that all of these articles all of a sudden came out. Zelensky is turning authoritarian. Zelensky is trying to hold the government. Zelensky is sliding into this particular area. And it's like, okay, dude, you guys were already there. Dude was not having elections for years, over a year at this point. Even though there was no provision for him to just blow off elections. He was throwing people in prison. Like this idea that all of a sudden, hey, It looks like Zelensky is trying to be a dictator. Huh, that's weird. The idea that that assessment came on one day and that Zelensky was trying to take power on one day and that this country was radically corrupt on one day and that Zelensky didn't have his hand in the cookie jar on this one day, that seems to be a bit rich to me, which is why I don't buy this premise that these guys are trying to sell in the West of authoritarian slide. Zelensky is, betrayed Ukraine, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Effectively, the way that they're coming out with this and the way that they're talking about this, I just don't buy it. I just don't buy it. I found the Ryan Grimm. That's his name, Ryan Grimm. I want to play this clip because when we talk about this ability to have leverage on a political figure, it's real. It's not conceptual. It's not something that people are just hypothetically thinking up. It's been done before. This is Ryan Grimm giving a breakdown of Benjamin Netanyahu applying political leverage to Bill Clinton. If I can play it, there we go.
Take a trip down memory lane.
This is crazy.
The 1990s, Benjamin Netanyahu, Bill Clinton, and Monica Lewinsky. Stick around for this one. So in a scandal that has been largely lost to contemporary memory, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was alleged to have blackmailed then-President Bill Clinton by revealing to him that Israel had collected tapes of phone sex calls between the 42nd president and White House intern Monica Lewinsky. The story is worth revisiting amid allegations that Jeffrey Epstein was involved in a long-running Israeli blackmail operation of his own. So Clinton met with Netanyahu in the Oval Office in February 1997. Subsequently, according to testimony Lewinsky gave to the special counsel's office, Clinton's secretary Betty Curry reached out to Lewinsky to invite her to an Oval Office meeting, telling her Clinton, quote, had something important to tell her, unquote. It would turn out to be their final sexual encounter, but Clinton also used the opportunity to tell her that a, quote, foreign embassy had tapped his phone and recorded their conversation, Lewinsky said. Clinton did not specify which embassy, though the meeting with Lewinsky came the month after his meeting with Netanyahu. The special prosecutor's report was far more concerned with Lewinsky's claim of the sexual encounter that day because it contradicted Clinton's claim that they had had only one encounter that year than they were with the fact that a foreign government was spying on the president and letting him know about it. The prosecutor was also interested in Clinton's response, namely that he proposed cover stories. These are cover stories that the two could employ if they were confronted with the tapes. Clinton suggested the pair say they knew they were under surveillance and the phone sex was a, quote, put on for whoever was listening. That's an awfully flimsy idea.
Wait. Wait. Can we pause there for the moment? You're the president of the United States. You're president of the United States. You're having sex with a 20-something-year-old. I think she was 20-something. And you are what, 50-something? Bill Clinton, Slick Willie. What is it, Venus in the 12th? It's like the cheating aspect, the Bill Clinton aspect, as we call it. You get caught. And you say, we need a cover story. Now, keep in mind, this is the same man who said it depends on what your definition of is in a legal briefing. When they asked him if he was, I forget, it's like, did you have sex with Lewinsky? It depends on what your definition of is, something like that. Same guy. And he says, I have an idea. Let's tell them that we knew we were being recorded. I mean, the president of the United States knew he was being recorded. Okay, right there, you have a problem, right? Who's eavesdropping on the president of the United States? Why are you okay with them eavesdropping on the president of the United States? Both of these things are problematic, right? But okay, let's put that to the side. Let's tell people we knew we were being recorded and we were hamming it up by talking dirty to each other. Mr. Clinton, sir, president, are you a married man? Yeah, but I was just playing with the Lewinsky. That's all. We're just playing. We're just joking. I was just saying very dirty things to her, and she was saying very dirty things back to me. And we were just, hamming it up because we knew we were being recorded. That is amazing. That is amazing. The fact that you would even throw that out there as a potential excuse to skate around the fact that you're cheating on your wife and you got busted by the Israelis for doing so. That's amazing. Let's go back. Let's let Ryan Grimm finish. I just wanted to double down on that. That is a mind-blowing thing to say on so many levels. Bill Clinton was living dirty. And if you are living a life like that, where you have to come up with horrible excuses like that, you need to change your life. You need to change your life, especially if you're president of the United States.
But look, he was guilty. The man did not have much to work with. Now, in April, Netanyahu and Clinton met again for a, quote, private visit. On a Saturday then in May 1997, Clinton again had Curry invite Lewinsky to the White House. During that visit, he broke up with her, Lewinsky testified. The next fall, so this is fall of 1998, Clinton hosted Netanyahu and Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat for a summit at Wye River, Maryland. Toward the end of the summit, at 7 a.m., after a long night of final negotiations and handshakes, Netanyahu approached Clinton privately to demand the release of convicted Israeli spy Jonathan Pollard, long a cause célèbre of the Israeli far right. That's according to reporting at the time from the New York Times. Now, Netanyahu brought up the sex tapes in the context of the Pollard demand, according to subsequent reporting by Washington Examiner editor Daniel Harper in his book, Clinton, Inc., The Audacious Rebuilding of a Political Machine. He writes, quote, not wanting to directly threaten the powerful American president, a crucial Israeli ally, Clinton was told that the Israeli government had thrown the tapes away, but the very mention of them was enough to constitute a form of blackmail, Halpern reported.
So think about that, right? Like you were talking to the president of the United States. The entirety of your little colony is dependent upon that same United States. And you know you have leverage over that president because you caught the president sticking his dick where it didn't belong. Now, you don't want to hit him directly with that. You don't want to hit him directly. You don't have the stones to hit him directly. You need to do this or else. And so you make your demands about the guy who you want to effectively get out of jail. And then you also introduce this other aspect of it of, by the way, I got rid of the tapes. Just letting you know. Just letting you know. Now, it is hard for you to say that these two things are unrelated because these things were introduced together. By the same token, there's this annoying aspect of humanity where if you say, are you blackmailing me? Your answer will be, no, of course not. I'm not going to do that. We're buds. I'm not going to blackmail you about that. I'm just telling you I got rid of the tapes. I mean, if I was blackmailing you, I would have blackmailed you. I'm just telling you I got rid of the tapes. When everybody in that room knows, okay, he's blackmailing me. Don't tell me that this Epstein stuff is not important. Don't tell me that. Don't tell me that. Let Ryan finish. It's just amazing to me. Let's see what happens.
The talks almost broke down as CIA chief George Tenet told Clinton he would resign on the spot if Clinton agreed to the terms. So instead, Clinton agreed to, quote, review Pollard's case. He did not release him. Pollard was eventually freed in 2015 under the Obama administration. Now, on the last day of his first term, Trump pardoned Pollard's handler. Back in Israel, Pollard is now an outspoken supporter of extremist National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, and has called for the full ethnic cleansing of Gaza. I don't know, Emily, what do you think?
This is why the Epstein issue is important. This is why it's important. Yes, the Israeli part is a big deal. That is true. But it's also this other aspect of things of if indeed leverage is being applied to political figures or financial figures or whatever in our space, in our political, space. Shouldn't we know that? Like if there are permutations in the way that your government is operating because somebody was diddling a child and somebody had evidence of them diddling a child and was holding over their head in order to compel their behavior, is that not important? I mean, this goes back to the whole Tucker Carlson thing where he's like, why are you okay with people spying on our government when he was talking to Ted Cruz? And Ted Cruz was like, I don't see any issue with it. How un-American are you in this case? You are effectively saying that you're okay with a foreign government spying on your president and spying on your political space. You have zero issue with it. Why do you have zero issue with that? Governments have secrets for reasons. And the idea that a government and another government are going to be one-to-one is nonsense. It's nonsense. And so this is one of the cases where the president of the United States got And they try to apply political pressure to get him to take a particular action that obviously Bill Clinton didn't necessarily want to take. And if it wasn't for one of the other people saying, I will resign in protest, which would have outed the issue, because you would have said, hey, why is that guy resigning? He's resigning because Bill Clinton is effectively giving up information about him diddling his staff. Okay, so it would have outed it if he would have resigned. Because again, somebody would ask, why are you resigning? It's kind of weird that you're just resigning out of the blue. So we don't know what Bill Clinton would have done if that strident stand didn't happen. It's very well possible that Bill Clinton, in order to save his neck, would have actually did what Netanyahu wanted him to do. I'm trying to point out that this idea that these guys were working from Assad and getting information to leverage on political figures, it's not out the blue. It's not random. It's not something that is beyond the pale. It is something that we have accurate data on, even against a sitting US president. Do we have another sitting US president that they have data on that is being forced to take certain actions and behaviors because of that data that they have on him? That is not trivial by any stretch of the imagination. I do understand that, right-wingers were making this an issue more than anything else. And I do understand that there are other issues that Donald Trump is trying to use this to distract from. Fair enough, but it's not minor. We can eat and chew gum or walk and chew gum at the same time. Both of these things can be litigated and discussed. It's also weird to me that of all the issues that Donald Trump has had to deal with in regards to pressure, where for the most part he blew off all of the other pressure. I mean, for God's sake, the financial system was about to melt down when he was going through his tariff war. And Donald Trump didn't want to back away from it at all. But on this, he's freaking out. Tulsi Gabbard is releasing everything. They're like, we're releasing evidence about aliens. We're releasing evidence about MLK. We're releasing evidence about this. Pay attention to something else. Please, for the love of God, pay attention to something else. It's not trivial. It's not trivial. Lord knows it is not trivial. Let's see, we have another chat. Who's the other chat from? Brian Berletic lives in Thailand. Yes. So maybe he would understand what's happening over there. So the way Brian has explained this to me is that he's explained this in a sense of, not this specifically, but when he talks about US influence, he talks about the way foreign soft power affects those countries, even in a place like Thailand, where like media, food, education, all of those things get infiltrated, which starts to pull the politics in a particular direction. He often says you need to defend your information space. This, though, seems like a colonial holdout. Now, there may be something else going on that is, let's say, provoked this conflict, but the conflict seemed to have been going on for decades. It's not like it just started today. It was heating up over the course of the last several months, but apparently this has been, let's say, an issue of crisis point, or at the very least, an issue of contention for years, going all the way back to, 1940 something, if I remember correctly. So we're talking about like 60 years in the making. Now, you could say, well, why did this spring up all of a sudden now? That is a fair question to ask. I saw something about somebody stepping on a landmine, but who knows if that is the entirety of it. Stepping on a landmine seems, it's not trivial. Don't misunderstand me. But you're launching air attacks. That's a hell of an escalation, right? Like one of my guys steps on the landmine. Let's say it kills him. Let's say it blows his leg off in the most horrific way that you could think of. And let's say he sits there, bleeds to death, with everybody in his company watches him bleeding to death. That's a horrible thing, right? Do you go to airstrikes? That just seems very extreme. That just seems very, very extreme. But again, I don't know the military doctrine. I don't know what else went on. I don't know if there's some other political event that's going around that push and edge that on. I'll hit Brian up and ask him. He tends to have his finger on the pulse of Thailand politics. Very rarely does he discuss it for obvious reasons. Like, I don't discuss Malaysian politics because I'm in Malaysia. I don't want to have somebody knock on my door saying, Mr. Thomas, you need to come with us. Hey, why? just come with us. You're talking bad about the president. He's trying to do the best thing for Malaysia. You don't even live here. That is not the conversation you want to have in a foreign government that may not have a First Amendment. But he may be able to explain any kind of surrounding issue associated with it. And again, it is very coincidental. India and Pakistan get into it over a terrorist action that I still have not excluded the United States for being a part of in order to kind of go after something that's on China's border, and definitely in order to create friction within the context of BRICS. Or if you want to look at, what is the other one? India and Pakistan, you have Thailand and Cambodia. Like, these countries are around China at this point, Israel and Iran. Like, they're going after the primary fulcrum of BRICS, or at the very least around the borders of these countries, creating chaos around the borders. Of course, the Philippines and China is another issue. We talked to that with KJ No yesterday. By the way, on that front, the Japanese prime minister is saying he's not stepping down. He is contradicting the reporting that was coming out yesterday, saying that he was calling it a day within a month. KJ and I talked about this yesterday with Ishiba, I believe his name is. We talked about this yesterday. Apparently, KJ hit me up. He says, hey, I'm seeing contrary reporting. And KJ was right. There was contrary reporting that was going after the reporting that came out earlier. So I reported the news, what they had, the news changed. And so I'm now reporting that also. So yeah, there is that. There is that. I don't know what's happened to Carl Zha. I've sent him several messages. Carl, in this iteration of the show, has been consistent. Oh, excellent. Ian Proud said he's willing to come on to the show to have a breakdown of the Trump and Russia stuff. So that is great. I'm always looking out for new guests. Inevitably, you have guests that die, that flick out, that you may have issues with. And so you always kind of have to replenish your guest pool. And you always want to try to get better and better guests that are more competent about a particular subject matter. They don't have to be super popular, but if they're very proficient and understands the subject matter, that's the thing that seems more important to me, even though being popular also helps. And so Ian Proud graciously responded and said he is down to come on the show. Greatly appreciate him for it. Greatly appreciate him for it. Let's try to hit another story. So the Russiagate thing has been wild. Now, I know that Donald Trump has been using Russiagate to dodge all issues pertaining to Epstein. Effectively, hey man, we shouldn't be talking about Epstein. Let's not bring that up. Let's talk about Russia, and let's talk about that. And even in the way he talks about it, where he's trying to make the connection between Russia hoax, Epstein hoax. Okay, that's kind of tortured. I don't think that's a hoax. Oh, I know. Russia hoax. Clinton, Obama, Brennan created the Russia hoax. And they also had something to do with the Epstein files. So there's my link. Okay, nobody's going to believe that. Nobody's believing that. By the same token, though, he's not entirely wrong about the Russiagate hoax. As somebody who worked on a Russian radio station and was sitting there looking at this, thinking to myself, this is outrageous. Now, I wasn't working there at the time that this was taking place, but the notion that Russia got Trump over the finish line was something that had been steeped into the American public for years. Even before I was anywhere near close to getting on a radio station, it was being steeped into the public for years. And I remember getting into fights with Democrats saying, where's your evidence for this? Where's your evidence for this? Where are you getting this from? And they would say, well, the Steele dossier. And it's like, you mean the political opposition research from Hillary Clinton? Yes. Or they would say, well, Donald Trump asked the Russians to release information on Clinton. You mean when he went on air and said that, that is what you're using for this? It was so thin all the way through. Or the Facebook and Twitter ads that apparently a Russian company put out And that Russian company spent, I think, like $56,000 on it, half of which taking place after the election. Now, this was an advertisement agency, not a political agency. It was an advertisement agency. And in the same way that I talk about stories that are current, because those stories are current, and you're trying to effectively stick a needle in a vein where you can flow along with it, where the public is interested at that moment. I mean, sure, you could talk about the Civil War. Unless you have a Civil War channel, nobody's going to watch it. So you try to talk about stuff that is relevant. The advertising channel was putting out ads that was relevant. And they look at that and says, see, the Russians were trying to influence our politics. Buff Jesus, obviously, was trying to, get people to vote for Donald Trump. It was nonsense. It was always nonsense. And yet the Democratic Party had every ill rationale to run for it because it was in their political interests to try to convince people that this was the case. The media had every interest to run with it because they hated Donald Trump and they didn't want him to win, or at the very least they wanted to damage him. And you got this love child, this grotesque, horse-faced love child between media, intelligence, and a political party that effectively trumpeted this to the world as if it was true. It was a massive psyop. In fact, I would go so far as to say it was one of the largest massive psyops that had ever taken place on the American soil, at the very least in modern context. And this was able to, it hobbled Trump in his first term. Now, maybe that hobbling was for the best, but I'm just saying it hobbled him in his first term. There were limits of what he can do. There were certain things that he had to do in order to make it look as if, see, I'm not really working with the Russians. We're not a Manchurian candidate. This was something that they effectively did to the entirety of the American public. And let's be very clear. The capability of a US president to work with the Russians after that becomes, if not nil, extraordinarily difficult. Don't sound like dogs. I was on a date-ish, coffee date. I call it a coffee date yesterday, 2 days ago. I learned, I'm sorry, this is an aside. I was on a coffee date yesterday and I learned, I didn't know she was Muslim, but she is. And she was telling me that you don't supposed to touch dogs here, which is the reason why I never see dogs here. The only thing you see here is cats. Just weird stuff I didn't know. Look, to get back to my main point, my main basic point is this was a massive psyop on the American public. And as it was a psyop on the American public, you can imagine that Donald Trump feels some kind of way about it at this point, even though this is what he's using to effectively cover for Epstein. When Tulsi Gabbard is releasing this information, she is obviously releasing some of this information in order to dodge for Trump, get back in his good graces. Look at some of the stuff that Hermitage has been doing great work. He's always done great work. Right here. This is one of the things that they released. The ICA notes that key judgments are based on a single well-established source. Okay, well, we make some judgments based on the reporting of an established clandestine source with secondhand access through identified subsources. So you don't even have a primary source. You have a secondary source. You have secondhand information that you're introducing as if this is rock solid evidence. Here's another one. I am fascinated by this because this is what they were effectively using when behind the scenes they knew this just wasn't true. Right here. Although the ICA correctly describes the primary source's reporting history, it does not explain that information a primary source passes on from a subsource is only as good as the subsource's access knowledge and bias. If those factors are unknown, then confidence in the information is affected accordingly. No doubt. So if I don't know who the second source is, then I have no idea of their biases. I have no idea of whether they're just making stuff up for political reasons. I have no idea how close they are to the primary source. I don't know any of this stuff. And so if you're passing this on to me as if this is rock solid, then you're effectively lying to me. I have no way to know that. They even got to the point of using a Steele dossier as part of the data set as they were trying to make their case that this was ironclad, rock solid. And of course, the media ran with it, screaming, it's a hack, it's a hack, it's a hack. The Russians have hacked the elections. The Russians have hacked the election. Now, mind you, this was a conflation from the Russians hacked Hillary Clinton's information. And it was conflated into the Russians hacked the election to make it look as if the election of Donald Trump was somehow fraudulent and phony. That's outrageous. All of that's outrageous. And of course, Donald Trump pissed off in 2016. I didn't lose, it was fraud. And then the Democrats are freaked out because he's calling it fraud directly, as opposed to using this kind of Orwellian language to go and call it fraud in the way that they were calling it fraud. Under normal circumstances, calling an election fraud is a red line. Oh, that is a fourth rail, like nobody's business. And the reason is rather obvious if you think about it for a bit. If our elections or if our country's integrity is based on who wins an election, then the integrity of the elections must be sacrosanct. They must be secure. It has to be impervious to fault or defect. Because the moment that you find fault and defect in your elections, then the legitimacy of your electoral process, which creates the legitimacy of your government in and of itself, erodes. So even if they thought that an election was dodgy, political candidates would very rarely say so. They would grin and bear it, taking one for the team being America as a whole. There's a reason why Hillary Clinton didn't come out and challenge the electoral system. Even when they thought something was dicey with it, they let Jill Stein do it. She wouldn't do it. She wouldn't touch it. Like, here's some money, Jill Stein. You go figure it out. She wouldn't touch it. That is the reason. Because at the very end of the day, from her point of view, okay, this is a hot rail. I can't necessarily challenge the integrity of the system. The integrity of the system is paramount. That is the thing that allows us to have a government and to have people to respect the government as being legal. So I'm not going to touch it. What I will do is to say that the Russians pushed Trump over the finish line. That I will say. It says something very similar without necessarily challenging the integrity of the American political system. It instead shifts that burden to the Russians. Trump didn't do that. Trump just immediately said the American political system is trash and I was cheated, which is short-sighted. It's very short-sighted, but that's where he went with it. I'm trying to point out that for all intents and purposes, going with that attack line on Trump is not that much different than Donald Trump saying the system is fraudulent. Yes, they're going about it in different ways, but you're still going and saying the political candidate that we are talking about is illegitimate. That's the point that I'm trying to make. I'm trying to say that this mass psyop that decided to try to delegitimize a president, as grotesque as that president is, that president won, and he won fair and square. You had a political space, you had an intelligence space that was willing to lie and lie openly, with a media space willing to amplify those lies in order to take down a president. And when I say take down, yes, it was a soft coup. When Donald Trump, if you notice, at the time, Democrats were looking for anything to use to go after Donald Trump, anything. Oh, he had a phone call with Ukraine. Let's use that to try to take down the president of the United States. Are you out of your mind? Are you out of your mind? Now, the second time around, after Donald Trump didn't necessarily want to accept the integrity of the election and just kept screaming fraud, fraud. If he was in another country, they would have put him in a cage over that stuff. And from my point of view, they should have. He didn't want to leave. You lose, you leave. That's the deal. You're imbued with a massive amount of political power and institutional power. And if you want to take it upon yourself to try to use that political power that was gifted to you by the American public to turn it on its head and try to forcibly stay in office, and just because you have a bunch of cultist lemmings that are willing to do it, you should be put in a cage. Zero issue saying it. Perfectly fine with saying it. I was saying it at the time. Trump should have been put in a cage. When Mitch McConnell goes out and gives that speech, it was a fantastic speech up until the very end. Mitch McConnell effectively said Donald Trump is to blame for January 6th. Donald Trump is to blame for not wanting to leave. Donald Trump is to blame for all of it. However, and that's where it falls off the rails. However, he is no longer president. And so, we shouldn't have to do this. No, you should have done that. You still should have done it. It was the principle behind it. Over and over again, we allow presidents to get away with murder. And then we're shocked that they continue to commit murder. Why do you think they continue to commit murder? Because you continuously let them get away with murder. So when George Bush gets 1 million people killed, tortures, which is against our laws, and lies to start a war, Nancy Pelosi said, I know he was lying. And yet there's no consequence from Congress. Well, does that not allow the next president to do something very similar, if not the same thing? Yes, it does. Then it was super weird that that same Nancy Pelosi was trying to impeach Donald Trump for talking to Ukraine, even though she let George Bush get away with getting 1 million Iraqis killed. It's just outrageous. It's just outrageous. But I have my guest here. I am going to my man, Daniel Lazare. Daniel Lazare, there we are. Daniel Lazare, independent journalist, author, best known as a critic of the U.S. Constitution, American politics, government, and social policy in general. He's written several books, including The Frozen Republic, Velvet Coup, and America's Undeclared War. Daniel, my man, I haven't seen you in a while. Welcome back. How you doing today? You doing all right?
Hi, great to see you.
So,
Sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. You're absolutely fine.
Right.
I want to talk about the files that Tulsi Gabbard is releasing.
Yeah.
Now, Armitage did a great write-up breaking down some of the intel and the intelligence and everything else that was in those documents that she was releasing. And I think it's become clear at this point that, A, they tried to amplify it as if it was a hack, even though it wasn't. They obviously didn't have the evidence. They were using secondhand sources in some cases to try to say that Donald Trump or that Putin wanted Trump to get elected. And they tried to amplify it to make it look as if it was more solid than what it actually was. Brennan was definitely involved in this. Obama seemed to be involved in this. Give me your take on this. I find this to be a massive psyop. And part of the reason I think it's a massive psyop is because any ability to make a deal with the Russians evaporated, especially from one side of the political space. I don't think people realize how it set the pretext for a lot of the stuff that we're effectively dealing with now in regards to Ukraine, Trump and Russia. All of these things on some level are related to one another. It seeded the Democratic Party with this just venomous hatred of Russia because in their mind, the Russians got Trump in office. Media doesn't make that connection, but I think it's true. Give me your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think you're saying. I mean, first of all, I'm not sure how much the Gabbard report adds to this. There's some interesting stuff about some of the internal debate over the finding that was released. It was in December, saying that Putin, wanted Trump to win and tried to influence the election. So some of the debate, the internal debate behind that is interesting. But the record was really clear from the beginning. The Democrats had gone far to the right, and they saw nothing wrong with engaging in endless Russia baiting, portraying themselves as more anti-Russian than the Republicans. Let me go back a bit. The process started really in 1991 when there was the vote, or 1990 actually. Hold a second, please. Let me just check this one thing.
You're fine.
Okay, so in 1990, the first Gulf War was impending, and there was a vote in Congress as to whether to approve military action. This, as you recall, Saddam Hussein had invaded Kuwait, taken over its oil fields. Clearly, the West is going to take action to roll this invasion back, and Congress was therefore called upon to vote for or against military action. And the Democrats at that point were still the peace party to a degree, and therefore Democrats have voted against the war resolution by 2-1 in the House and 4-1 in the Senate. They still passed, but nonetheless, the Democrats themselves were overwhelmingly against the war resolution.
Right.
Well, guess what happened The war went forward, and it was a total romp. The U.S., kicked Saddam's derriere back to Iraq. It was a triumphant display of Western military prowess. George Bush the first could have, marched straight into Baghdad if he had wanted to. So it was a great triumph for Bush 1, and it was a great embarrassment for all those Democratic doves who had voted against the war. From that point on, Democrats then reinvented themselves as the war party, more hawkish than the Republicans. And all through the 90s, this is the great Clinton change, the Democrats were more and more bellicose. And that continued through 2001, 2002, when top Democrats like Hillary Clinton voted for the war on terror, into the rest of the war on terror. And then in 2011, when Hillary was herself the Secretary of State, she warned Putin in so many words that if he didn't clean up his act, this is 2012 actually, she implied he could very well meet the same fate as Muammar Gaddafi, who had just been lynched by an American-inspired mob, okay? And Joe Biden, around the same time, came up with this crazy story that in a previous meeting, he had gazed deeply, deeply into Vladimir Putin's eyes and said, "There's no soul there." And according to Joe Biden, Putin looked back at him, smiled, and said, "We understand each other." So Putin was Satan incarnate in Democratic eyes. And more important, Democrats were, Putin was weak at that point. The Russia had still not recovered from the utter collapse under Boris Yeltsin. And so therefore, Putin bashing seemed to be a no-lose proposition, right? I mean, Russia was weak. You could threaten it. You could yell at it. You could accuse it of all kinds of things. And Russia was incapable of striking back. So it was perfect. Democrats could be hawks. They could be bullies. And there was nothing to fear. They would not have to pay any price at all. So then, however, things kind of blew up in 2014 when the U.S. pushed Russia too hard. When the U.S. backed a coup in Kiev, which alarmed Russia deeply. Russia moved to take over the Crimea, where its all-important Sevastopol naval base is located, and things went rapidly downhill from there. But then Donald Trump came along in 2015 and said, this is going too far. We should not be pushing Putin this way. And the Democrats erupted. They went crazy. And then when Hillary lost in 2016 to Trump on a technicality, I must emphasize, the Democrats essentially declared war. And let me just say one thing here. So
wait, just be clear. What's the technicality?
Well, the technicality was Electoral College.
Fair enough. Okay, fair enough. I just wanted to make sure. Okay, fair enough.
He lost the popular vote, but he wound up sneaking in by virtue of this utterly antiquated, 200 plus year old clause in the Constitution, which is unchangeable. So 24 hours after the election, this is according to a very good book called Shattered by James Allen and Parnes. I've got Parnes' first name. Shattered Inside Hillary Clinton's Doomed Campaign.
Fantastic book, by the way.
Yeah, it's not bad. Anyway, so campaign manager Robbie Mook and campaign chairman John Podesta quote, assembled Hillary's communications team at Brooklyn headquarters to engineer the case that the election wasn't entirely on the up and up.
Yep.
For a couple of hours, with Shake Shack containers littering the room, they went over a script they would pitch to the press and the public. And already Russian hacking was the centerpiece of the argument. So Donald Trump was not the first one to say the election was stolen. The Democrats said exactly the same thing in 2016. And the thieves were Donald Trump in collusion with Vladimir Putin. And for the next 4 or 5 years, that whole line would be embellished and embellished and embellished. And there's nothing to it. But the point is that it would be embellished regardless for political advantage. The Democrats would go on spinning this conspiracy tale, this ever more complicated conspiracy theory, until finally it blew up when Mueller's report in 2019 was a big zero. He found no evidence of collusion. But now, hey, it's back. Tulsi Gabbard has reopened the case, and Democrats are going bonkers, and we're all debating the same ridiculous story over and over again. But there is nothing to it. There is no evidence that the DNC was even hacked in April 2016. Now, it was hacked because security was so poor that who knows who was rustling through those wide open file cabinets in the DNC computers. So yeah, some Russians, government or non-government, were among those, wandering through. But there's no evidence they took anything. And there is not only no evidence, but a good deal of countervailing evidence that what they took was passed along to WikiLeaks to leak to the public in the following July, and therefore try to affect the outcome of the election. There's just nothing there at all. So it's just a fantastic web of fantasies, lies, and conspiracy theories.
Yes.
That have been built up into this gigantic non-scandal.
Julian, just to be clear, Julian Assange said he didn't get it from the Russians.
Yes. And by the way, Assange, his record for truthfulness and veracity is 100%, because that's his business.
Yeah.
I mean, he releases these documents to the public. The documents, believe me, if there are any phony documents in the batches he releases, the press will be all over him. And so he's got to make clear that the documents are all valid, accurate, genuine, etc. So he's in the business of telling the truth, and he tells the truth.
Yeah.
And so when he says the Russians are not involved, he is far more credible than the CIA, which, according to who was it? Said, it was the guy from Missouri. We lie, we cheat, we
steal for a living. Yeah, that's Pompeo. Pompeo. Yeah, it was Pompeo.
We take and have entire courses on how to do this. So who are you gonna believe? Julian Assange. And I'm not saying that Julian Assange is the greatest guy in the world, but who are you going to believe? A guy whose record for veracity is 100%, and who is in the truth business, or the CIA, which is in the business of lying according to its own director?
Yes.
So, hello. I mean, sorry.
No, you're perfectly fine, and you're perfectly right. You're perfectly right. Do you think there should be consequences for this? I think that's the debate that is being had. I don't think the debate. Look, I think Trump has ulterior motives for putting this out. I think there are two main ones. One, if indeed he wants to make a deal with the Russians, he can't have Russiagate hanging over his head. And two, he's trying to dodge the Epstein thing because the Epstein thing is on his ass. It's like a dog that's just been to. I don't know if you've seen Friday. There's a scene where the postman was running from the dog. He jumps up on the thing and it clamps on his ass. That's the Epstein case. Donald Trump. That's what that is. So he's trying to avoid. I don't know I don't know who's this Epstein that you guys are talking about. I don't know anything about Epstein. What do you mean by Epstein? It's not working. But he's trying to throw this chum into the water. So I do get it. I think
I would love to see John Brennan go to jail.
Yeah,
the former CIA director, because I think he committed perjury and lying about the Steele dossier. I think he clearly presented that dossier as genuine when any reasonable person, and he knew it was not genuine. So I would like to see him prosecuted. But I'd like to see a lot of other people prosecuted as well. I still want to see Joe Biden prosecuted for blowing up Nord Stream. And I'm wondering what's taking Tulsi Gabbard so long to get to that. I can't understand it. But I think I'd love to see Brennan prosecuted.
Well, the problem with her doing that, it's kind of the same problem I pointed out with George Bush. The moment that you prosecute a president for it, then that's no longer allowed. Well, and Donald Trump wants to be able to commit terrorism every bit as much as Joe Biden committed a mass act of terrorism.
Well, Brennan, though, is not an ex-president. He's a ex-CIA director.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, the latest things about this meeting in January 2017 during Obama's final weeks, I don't really quite get it. I think it's a little bit overblown. I mean, clearly Obama was understood that the CIA was going to press this issue. The CIA was rushing to get this finding public, so that it would go on record as arguing that Trump was somehow in cahoots with Putin. And by the way, I mean, did Putin favor Trump's election? Well, very possibly. Maybe. But so did Benjamin Netanyahu. So did a lot of people, and so did and lots of other national leaders around the world, friendly or hostile to the U.S., favored Clinton. It's there's no evidence whatsoever that Putin engaged in any kind of covert activities. There was like $40,000 worth of ads on Facebook, most of which were completely apolitical, had nothing to do with anything. That may have been seen by a few thousand people. I mean, this is all. It's a conspiracy tale. I mean, if you believe this, you may as well believe that Democrats are running a child pedophile ring out of a Washington pizzeria. I mean, there's just as much evidence to support that as there is this, really. And in fact, that tale did a lot less damage than this one did. It's ridiculous. Now, as for Epstein,
you want to hit Epstein? You want to talk about that? Look, let me show you this piece first, and then I'm going to get your take on it. So it is clear at this point what everybody thought was true is true. Donald Trump's name is all throughout those Epstein files.
But that's meaningless. So is his wife and daughter. His wife and daughter as well. So that's all it means. Doesn't mean a damn thing. I mean, I could have been on it. I mean, if it's like Epstein called me and invited me to lunch, I probably would have gone. So I would have wound up in the Epstein files. It just doesn't mean. And this is exactly how Russiagate proceeded.
I think these are so different.
Tiny little factoids that were plunked out of context and suddenly were given all this huge meaning where they didn't mean a damn thing.
But we don't know if these are factoids because they haven't showed us the files. We don't know. I mean, look, the argument that is made for Epstein is that he has been feeding children to grown, powerful men, and that those powerful men were caught under Mossad or something like that, where leverage could be applied to them. That's a big deal. That's a massive deal.
Jamal, I am going to say something.
Please.
That will shock you to your depths. Are you ready? Okay.
I am prepared. I am prepared.
I believe Alan Dershowitz.
Do you?
Alan Dershowitz
Do you?
was Epstein's lawyer.
Uh-huh.
That means he got access to everything. He wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal that was very persuasive. First of all, he says there were no client lists. Secondly, he says there were no video cameras. In fact, the only video camera was one that Epstein had installed on the advice of the police after there was some kind of break-in, and it was trained on a tennis court. And third, he says that he was not a Mossad agent, because if he had been a Mossad agent, they would have used that to get a better deal from the courts.
They
because
did.
The courts, they didn't.
They did.
Well, Dershowitz would have loved to have had evidence he's a Mossad agent, because he could have used that as leverage to negotiate a better deal. And he says we couldn't do it because there was nothing there.
Acosta
the
says
lesson,
something different, though. Acosta says that he was working for intelligence. This is above my pay grade, and to cut him loose, which is the reason why he got that sweetheart deal. Where most of the week he was able to effectively leave jail. That is not normal for a pedophile. This was one of the things that Acosta flat out said when they were asking him about this during Trump's trying to get Acosta confirmed.
Oh, yes. Although that deal was rotten, that first deal was rotten. Dershowitz came on board afterwards. There's no doubt about it. That deal was rotten. I'm not denying that, but I think and there was some speculation of interference in high places. I just see it as pure money. At a time when these kinds of sexual crimes were not given the importance they should be given. The lesson of Watergate, of Russiagate, to me is go with the obvious explanation first. If the sun rises in the east, it's not because of a conspiracy. Because that's what always happens.
The moon landing didn't happen.
And so go with this is Occam's razor, a principle in science that the simplest explanation is best. And I think that what Dershowitz says is very persuasive. But the Democrats see blood. They figure that they can do the same thing with Russia, with Epstein Gate, that they did with Russiagate, and that is torture Trump, with grabbing onto various factoids, and sort of dangling them in front of the press, even though they're meaningless, like the fact that he shows up, in the Epstein trials along with his wife and daughter, and apparently their telephone and home addresses are listed, but that's just meaningless, absolutely meaningless. And this is all just a conspiracy tale. Trump had no reason to rely on the women that Epstein supposedly supplied. I mean, Trump was a man about town. His sexual prowess was trumpeted on the front page of the New York Post. Mine wasn't, and I don't believe yours was, but his was. He was the man about town. His romantic escapades were page one news. So he didn't need Epstein. He was a billionaire, even though he was actually bankrupt for much of his time. But he was I
still disagree with you on this. Well, not entirely disagree with you. A few points.
Okay.
One, many of the women, the lawyer who was working with many of the women who were apparently trafficked, the U.S. government didn't want to talk to those women. Even under Pam Bondi, didn't want to talk to those women. Those women were just languishing and not being able to give their testimony. Two, many women have come out the woodwork, and you can say they're lying.
No. I'm
not going to say that. But many of the women that come out the woodwork that talked about the way that Trump and Epstein, let's say, got along. In the case of one case, Epstein's girlfriend being molested by Donald Trump. Another case, a woman being, let's say, treated inappropriately, again, by Donald Trump. Like, these stories are coming up. Now, you could say sexual abuse is not the same thing as raping kids, and I would agree with you.
But that's not what happened. The one woman testified that she was working at Epstein's office late at night. Donald Trump came in, kind of ogled her.
This is a different woman. Epstein's girlfriend at the time said that Donald Trump was interested in her. I mean, Epstein told her, Donald Trump is interested in you. They go up to Donald Trump's office. Donald Trump has his hands all over her. She says she's shocked by the whole thing. This is taking place in the open. And she's like, I can't believe this is happening. They go downstairs. Epstein has a fit, flips out. Like, why did you let him touch you like that? Now, this is pretty rich because it's like, hey, you're my boyfriend. What do you mean? Why did I let him? Like, this is your friend. How are you not getting involved? But I think you're making my point, though. These are multiple stories that have started to come out with, and Donald Trump is not doing himself any favors because he's trying to act as if Epstein didn't exist. He didn't know him, wasn't friends with him, wasn't buddies with him. I'm not going to release the files. Okay, dude, transparency.
Trump was sued for rape. He was only found guilty of. He was not found guilty. A judgment was delivered against him because it was a civil case.
Yeah, it was bogus.
I forgot what the actual final verdict was some kind of sexual violation.
Yeah.
Trump is the man who bragged about grabbing them by the, you know what. Mm-hmm. So the fact that Trump may have behaved inappropriately with a woman who was with Epstein, I don't know anything about it. It certainly is not impossible. That doesn't mean it occurred, but it certainly isn't impossible. But what are we going to see? We have the Democrats, go back and try to rustle up these incidents from 30 or 40 years ago. I mean, look, the Democrats tried to, not only tried to, they successfully prosecuted Trump and fined him $500 million for the crime of exaggerating the dimensions of an apartment he was selling. Yeah. And in fact, it was a totally victimless crime because the bank he was dealing with, so they always, Trump always hypes things up, and so therefore we always divide by 3 whatever he says. But no, they were happy to do business with him. They prosecuted him. They won a $500 million judgment.
I agree.
I mean. So are we back in that territory again? I mean, the Democrats are so pathetic. This is all they can do. They start wars. They bumble into a war in the Ukraine. They bumble into a war in Afghanistan. Joe Biden, in each case, played a key role. Yes. When the Afghanistan was falling apart, reporters asked Joe Biden what he's going to do. He says, "Hey, it's July 4th. I got to go eat some hamburgers and drink a beer. Leave me alone." I mean, this party is just beyond pathetic, and all they can do is dredge up these ancient scandals and spin these fantastic conspiracy theories, which I say are no more plausible than Pizzagate.
I agree with you that the Democratic Party is trash. Meaning, me going after Trump doesn't mean I think the Democrats are great by any stretch. But MAGA is the one that is taking a chunk out of Trump's ass on this. Meaning it's MAGA who is very angry and upset. Trump isn't behaving this way because of Democrats. He's behaving this way because his own party has been eating him alive. And I will give you one other case, Bill Clinton. So Brian Grimm pointed out the story where Bill Clinton, so apparently Bill Clinton was having phone sex with Monica Lewinsky. That it comes out where the Mossad gets their hands, basically phone taps, and gets the call. Netanyahu wanted Bill Clinton to release a felon that the United States was holding. And in having a conversation with Bill Clinton, he drops the point of, hey, by the way, I got rid of the tape of you having phone sex with Monica Lewinsky. I just want you to know that. Meaning he's trying to knuckle Bill Clinton to get the felon out of prison.
So Ryan Grimm, is this what he said? I didn't
Yep.
hear this. He said that.
I can play it to you.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, he wanted him to do it. One of the, I believe it was the CIA guy, effectively said, look, if you do that, I'm going to quit. In which case, Bill Clinton didn't do it. Bill Clinton said, I will review the case. Now, they let, I think it was somebody else associated with the guy out. Eventually, the guy got out, but Bill Clinton himself didn't do it. I'm pointing out, though, that they were willing to use compromising information.
I find this very implausible.
Do you?
Yes. So Mossad was tapping White House phone lines, and then Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, was threatening to blackmail the president of the United States. I find that hard to believe.
Why? Why do you find that hard to believe?
Because that's not the way the world works. I mean, Mossad doesn't tap White House phone lines.
Now, keep in mind, I'm saying tap as a colloquial. I'm not saying it as a literal.
Listen in, tap. Whether not the old style where you actually stick a wire in a telephone, but I mean, and Netanyahu doesn't engage in blackmail. I mean, first of all, he doesn't need to engage in blackmail. The U.S.-Israeli alliance by Clinton days, because of the increasingly hawkish stance of the Democrats, was as solid as ever. I mean, Netanyahu's not going to foul things up by engaging in blackmail in order to get some friend sprung from a U.S. prison. I mean, this is not how it works. And I mean, they're too careful. There's too much at stake. I mean, Israel's future, depends on its alliance with the U.S. It's not going to do anything foolish to upset that relationship. And engaging in blackmail would be very, very risky. Trump tried it against Zelensky. It was 2019, and the whole thing blew up. It didn't do Trump any good at all. So this is just not how reality is. Wild enough in itself. You don't have to add all these details. I mean, reality is radical, and we don't have to make it more so.
But I mean, this is the reporting that was taking place.
This is Ryan Grimm is reporting this.
I will play you what he said, so you can take issue with what he said directly. I don't want to. I don't want to. Because to me, because from my point of view, it's like obviously Mossad, an intelligence agency, spy on other governments, and you have Israelis crawling all over the place in the U.S. in regards to the spying. I had John Kiriakou on the show who said as much, and so it's like if you get your hands on evidence that Bill Clinton is having an affair, okay, well, what are you spying for if you're not willing to use that evidence to your best interest? Let me. Where's here we are. All right. This is Ryan Grimm. I'm not going to play all of it, but I will play you enough of it for you to get the gist of what he is saying. Because maybe I'm saying it in a way where you're like, okay, dude, you're not saying that right.
Lewinsky. Stick around for this. Let's also take a trip down memory lane.
This is crazy.
The 1990s, Benjamin Netanyahu, Bill Clinton, and Monica Lewinsky. Stick around for this one. So in a scandal that has been largely lost to contemporary memory, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was alleged to have blackmailed then-President Bill Clinton by revealing to him that Israel had collected tapes of phone sex calls between the 42nd president and White House intern Monica Lewinsky. The story is worth revisiting amid allegations that Jeffrey Epstein was involved in a long-running Israeli blackmail operation of his own. So Clinton met with Netanyahu in the Oval Office in February 1997. Subsequently, according to testimony Lewinsky gave to the special counsel's office, Clinton's secretary Betty Curry reached out to Lewinsky to invite her to an Oval Office meeting, telling her Clinton, quote, had something important to tell her, unquote. It would turn out to be their final sexual encounter, but Clinton also used the opportunity to tell her that a, quote, foreign embassy had tapped his phone and recorded their conversation, Lewinsky said. Clinton did not specify which embassy, though the meeting with Lewinsky came the month after his meeting with Netanyahu. The special prosecutor's report was far more concerned with Lewinsky's claim of the sexual encounter that day, because it contradicted Clinton's claim that they had had only one encounter that year, than they were with the fact that a foreign government was spying on the president and letting him know about it. The prosecutor was also interested in Clinton's response, namely that he proposed cover stories. These are cover stories that the two could employ if they were confronted with the tapes.
We can skip these, so these are ludicrous, just utterly absurd cover stories.
Suggested. The pair say they knew they were under surveillance, and the phone sex was, he was guilty. The man did not have much to work with. Now, in April, Netanyahu and Clinton met again for a, quote, private visit. On a Saturday then, in May 1997, Clinton again had Curry invite Lewinsky to the White House. During that visit, he broke up with her, Lewinsky testified. The next fall, so this is fall of 1998, Clinton hosted Netanyahu and Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat for a summit at Wye River, Maryland. Toward the end of the summit, at 7 a.m., after a long night of final negotiations and handshakes, Netanyahu approached Clinton privately to demand the release of convicted Israeli spy Jonathan Pollard, long a cause célèbre of the Israeli far right. That's according to reporting at the time from the New York Times. Now, Netanyahu brought up the sex tapes in the context of the Pollard demand, according to subsequent reporting by Washington Examiner editor Daniel Harper in his book, Clinton, Inc., The Audacious Rebuilding of a Political Machine.
Okay, so this is coming...
So it all hangs in the Washington Examiner, a far-right publication.
Well, no, it also hangs on Monica Lewinsky.
So the far right was manufacturing lurid Bill Clinton stories, doing their this is the what was the scandal? So many scandals I can't keep up. What was
there were
the
few.
scandal? But the real estate deal that had gone sour in Arkansas, and the Arkansas airport that was being used to smuggle cocaine to Central America or the other direction. I mean, don't you remember back in these days all these lurid scandals that were being floated about Hillary and Bill? The Washington Examiner, the Washington Examiner of all ridiculous places is the hook for this
I accept that, but
story.
The problem is it was Monica Lewinsky that outed the first part, saying a foreign government has gotten a conversation from us. Meaning, you can say the Washington Examiner, fair enough, but he is reading testimony about.
So Monica says that Bill said that someone said that a foreign embassy was listening in the conversations. How many embassies are located in Washington? 150. And so therefore it had to be Israel because the Washington Examiner said so. And somehow the Jonathan Pollard story, hangs on this. I mean, where is the skepticism? Where is the skepticism? I mean,
Daniel, there are a few points for this. A, he is reading legal documents where they were talking about this in court.
The legal document is this farcical special prosecutor's report about, and what was the name of the special prosecutor? This idiot
Mueller.
From what?
Mueller.
No. The prosecutor who looked into the Monica Lewinsky.
What it was? It was Linda Tripp. That was the woman the most hated woman on the planet.
The special prosecutor was this ludicrous. The guy spent 2 years investigating, whether Bill Clinton got a blowjob in the Oval Office. You're exactly right. Who can remember this? There's this is 30 years ago. A great deal has happened. So the fact that a legal document, there was some
Ken Starr.
It was some ridiculous report issued by an idiot named Ken Starr, who went on to become president of Baylor University, if I recall correctly. This is just all meaningless. And Ryan Grimm hanging this on the Washington Examiner. What a joke. So this is the Washington scandal machine. You've got to keep your distance. There's actually was I was reading a number of years ago a biography of Warren G. Harding, president from 1921 to 23, and something called the Teapot Dome scandal exploded on his watch. And Teapot Dome investigated what involves something to do with oil leases. and Congress went crazy, and the Democrats went crazy. Harding was a Republican. And this historian, in this lengthy 600-page biography of Harding, says, I went back over the Teapot Dome, and I still can't understand what it was about. He says, I just don't understand it. The charges kept changing, the story kept changing. It wasn't clear what was wrong with the oil leases, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So everyone remembers Teapot Dome, but no one has any idea what it's about. So these scandals keep on going and going. Hillary's involved in some real estate deal. There's some airport in Arkansas where somebody is maybe flying drugs in. Bill maybe snorting coke, and I think it's, by the way, I wouldn't be surprised if Bill wasn't snorting coke at some time. But meanwhile, wars are erupting. And meanwhile, the Democrats are beneath contempt and are trying to save themselves by dredging up the Epstein scandal, and stupid reporters, press and company accepted, of course, are salivating over meaningless details. I'm sorry, I've reached the point in my life where I'm completely fed up with this nonsense. I mean, American politics are so dysfunctional; they are falling apart in such a spectacular way, and this is evidence of that.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I accept that. I accept your skepticism on all of this. I do. Fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. And you're right. It is falling apart. Like, they are throwing chum in the water in order to deflect from something else.
Yeah, like Gaza, Gaza, like the Ukraine, like the surprise unprovoked attack on Iran. Yeah, some really, really, really bad stuff is happening in the world.
But as well, they don't seem to care about that. Like, I don't get the sense that they need to deflect from that. They don't even care. Like, from the U.S. media standpoint, that is a Tuesday. That's the way it seems. Or correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Oh yeah, no, well, that's true. That's true. Horrible things happen all over the world, not only in Gaza. They're happening in Burma, Myanmar. I mean, in Somalia. I mean, lots of really in the Eastern Congo. Lots of really bad things are happening around the world. And the press. Years ago, Alexander Coburn wrote a really funny article about how a car crash in Great Britain, gets 2 paragraphs in the New York Times. A train wreck in Poland gets 3 paragraphs. A volcano in Indonesia in which thousands die gets 3 paragraphs. So there clearly is this value scale where third world lives just don't matter very much.
Oh, just to be clear, I'm not trying to subvert those stories. Those stories are extraordinarily important. I cover them all the time. I'm saying the U.S. media, because of, let's say, the hand that we have in them, don't seem to care. Like, it's shocking, but they don't seem to.
Well, everybody plays politics.
Daniel, man, I've enjoyed this conversation. You have no idea. I enjoy it every time you come on. I really do. Daniel Lazare. Daniel Lazare is an independent journalist and author, best known as a critic of the U.S. Constitution, American politics, as you can see here, and government and social policy in general. He's written several books, including The Frozen Republic, The Velvet Coup, and America's Undeclared War. You can follow Daniel on X at DH Lazare, and you can find his writing on This Is Wrong.
I write for permanentrevolution.com. That's permanent-revolution.org. I'm sorry. And I write occasionally for a blog called The Democratic Constitution, and various other places as well.
Thank you.
I've got several books out there, which you just go to Amazon, type my name in, and buy them all, and I'd be very happy. Anyway, so it was great talking to you, Jamal, too. Thank you for allowing me to go on in this way.
No, I want you to make your point. It is a badge of honor of the show that I can let people make their points.
Right.
And so
thank you.
Thank you for this, man. I really do appreciate it. You be safe, okay?
Same to you.
All right. let's go to my next guest. We are joined with the man himself, Johnny Miller. Johnny Miller is a British journalist based in Moscow, spending much of his time covering the Ukraine war and reporting from Donbass. Johnny, I have to be honest with you. You will disagree with me on this, but I am somewhat jealous of your experiences, even though they're terrifying. Even though they're terrifying. I get the sense that when people, it's one thing for me to cover wars here, looking out at it from perched at the edge of the world and having a point of view. It's another thing to be there. It seems like your point of view will be more, I don't know, grounded, if that makes sense, just because you're there, like you see it. It's one thing for it to be conceptual and you're thinking about it. It's another thing for you to see it happen on a daily basis. Your emotions about it, how you feel about it are more visceral because you're engaged in it. I don't know. How you doing, man? You doing okay today?
I'm doing all right. So I was a little bit late. My alarm didn't go off. I don't know why. I set an alarm.
Well, you and Carl Ja, neither one of your alarms went off.
Sometimes I just forget about appointments. So I set the alarm, just didn't go off. And suddenly I thought, I'm sure I'm doing an interview right now. So apologies for that.
No,
But,
it's perfectly okay. You came on and I appreciate you coming on.
The Moscow summer is, people think Russia's very cold, but the summer in Moscow is almost tropical. It's a very sticky heat, mosquitoes, tropical rainstorms. So Moscow summer is amazing. So I'm doing very well.
It's funny, that's the same thing has been taking place in the US, where it's been apparently brutally hot. And my mom has been coming, she's like, oh my God, it's been so hot. Now keep in mind, in Malaysia, it's been like 98 degrees, 95 degrees every day. Like just clockwork. Since you've been here, you wake up in the morning, it's like 85. So I do get it. I feel where you're coming from with it.
Yeah.
I would hopefully at some point I'm going to get the opportunity to go to Moscow. I really want to visit. I really want to see the country itself. I want to, drink coffee in Red Square or vodka in Red Square or whatever. I want to talk about two things. One has to do with the protests that are taking place in Ukraine, and the other has to do with the results of the meeting between Russia and Ukraine that Zelensky was obviously forced to go to. He clearly didn't want to go. Were there any breakthroughs at all in the peace negotiations, quote unquote, that took place yesterday?
Well, it doesn't look like it. I think the Russian delegation says, one comment I saw, that he talked about China back in the civil war in China, saying Chiang Kai-shek and Mao Zedong met about 5 times. All the time the West was giving one side weapons, but in the end, communist China won. And I think he was referencing that to say that these talks, we've had how many now? I mean, we had major talks in Istanbul 3 years ago. Yeah. And we had another one in Istanbul recently. This is the third. I think I'm probably missing 1 or 2 out. But there have been these meetings, various meetings, all the time, though. The West, if you like, just like in China, has been supplying weapons to the Ukrainian side. And what the Russian delegation is saying, that we can meet again and again and again. You can continue to give your weapons, but ultimately we will win. As communist China won, not quite so communist nowadays, Russia will win. And that's essentially what he's saying. So Russia's open to these peace talks, but I think very much they're going through the motions, because you have Donald Trump now giving weapons again. It seems like he's going back to the Biden policy and threatening Russia. If you don't change your behavior in 50 days, I'm going to do something. Probably won't do anything. But so against that backdrop, it's very hard to see what actually is going on. But I think Russia is just, and perhaps even Ukraine, are just going through the motions of talking.
Do you think, so that's the other part that I want to go to, because that allows me to pivot into the protests. I think the protests are very strange. I think they are very bizarre. You get Seymour Hersh getting a tip from DC, and in that tip, it says they're going to give rid of Zelensky. After that, you get other articles come out saying Zelensky is a dictator, Zelensky is authoritarian. Then you get Zelensky seemingly trying to solidify his power base by having Yermak move various people around in the political space, prime minister changes. There was somebody else that was changed. And then they find out that Nabu and Sapo were going to investigate Zelensky and his circle, in which case Zelensky is like, all right, we're going to raid these offices where dozens get raided. I think they detained 2, and his justification for it was obviously the Russians had infiltrated these quote unquote corruption organizations that were effectively controlled by the United States. Now, Financial Times have pointed out that regardless of what's being said, Donald Trump still believes that Zelensky is the biggest impediment to peace and that he can better work with Vladimir Putin. At the same time that these organizations get raided, within a few hours, you have massive protests that just rock Ukraine, with them attacking Zelensky directly, attacking Yermak directly. We're not stupid. F Yermak. Sit on a dick, Yermak. Like, this is the stuff that these people are saying. That is a weird thing to say, sit on a dick, Yermak, but maybe it's not translating well. Whatever. The point that I'm making is they don't seem to be natural. They feel like AstroTurf. Are these things related? Where, yeah, Donald Trump is saying, I'm giving you 50 days, but the 50 days is not, it's a bare minimum ultimatum. I mean, for one, the sanctions are expected to hit and hurt the United States every bit as much as it hurts Russia. Russia is not going to flinch. They're going to continue to do what they do. So it's obvious Trump doesn't have any influence on the Russians in this way. And they've made the point before that they wanted to get rid of Zelensky, especially if there's any potential for a deal with Russia. So are we looking, like, how does Russia see these protests? Do they see these protests as being organic? Do they see them as inorganic? And if they are indeed inorganic, what do they think the objective for them are, if not to get rid of Zelensky?
Yeah, we're speculating a bit now because it's still happening. But your questions are absolutely 100% valid, and I think you're kind of angling at, the idea that is the United States trying to get rid of Zelensky, and I would agree with that. If you look at Seymour Hersh's article, you also see how Zelensky's all of a sudden being pictured in some of the Western press. Even the Kiev Independent, the Ukrainian newspaper, wrote a critical piece about Zelensky, always with his very new sort of angry face, looking like one of the bad guys. So I think, there's all these power structures you have within Ukraine and within their masters, if you like. You have the United States, and in the United States you have the Democrats, the whole sort of Biden CIA gang, and then you have the Trump power, and they have their different interests. Then you have the British, who are very important of all of this. The best indications that Zelensky is very much being controlled by the British. And the British have their own interests, of course. The Europeans have theirs, but less so. It's more the Americans and the British. And then inside Ukraine, you also have different power structures who are differently aligned with different groups. So even in the Azov, the very powerful and well-known extremist, far-right, whatever you want to call it, nationalist organizations. Some of them are more aligned with the kind of Western NGO types. Some of them are more aligned with the more hardliners in Ukraine. So you have all these different power structures. And I think what you're seeing here is a kind of fight-off for power. These anti-corruption organizations that Zelensky's trying to ban, they're very much linked with the American CIA kind of Democrat Party groups. So, we're speculating at the moment, I think, in that, so why is Zelensky suddenly going after these organizations? He says that they are infiltrated by Russian spies. I doubt that. Well, I don't necessarily doubt that. There probably is one or two Russian spies in that. I'm not sure. But that's clearly aligned to say, oh, well, everything is Russian. So that's not the reason. It's not infiltrated massively by Russian spies. But I think we are seeing ultimately a power play, and people coming onto the streets. Most of them will be very genuine, that corruption is a big problem. But Ukraine is one of the most corrupt countries in the world, with or without these anti-corruption agencies.
Exactly.
Ridiculous. But these protests, I think most of them will be genuine. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's pressure, people pushing them onto the streets and whipping up anger. And I think what you're seeing is a power struggle, and it's difficult to see from who and who's going to win.
Yeah, so just to show some of these articles that just came out of the blue and all at once. As you pointed out, one was pointing out right here, outrage, because all of this stuff happened at the exact same time. And we're to believe that one of the most corrupt countries in the world that everybody knew was super corrupt, that all of a sudden it took him getting rid of these two organizations that I'm not even sure how many people knew about to bring thousands of people out into the courtyard. It's just a little, bit rich. Outrage in Ukraine as the government attacks anti-corruption watchdog. Here's another one. Oh, yes, I accept. Right here. Thousands gather in Ukraine to protest as Zelensky signs bill weakening anti-corruption agencies. As you pointed out, the one in Kiev Independent, I think the one is called Zelensky has betrayed us, something to that effect. I mean, they just go for the jugular.
It's important to know that when Ukraine dropped the enlistment, the conscription age last year from 27 to 25, there would have been huge anger at that. Were there protests? Yes. Not that I'm aware of. If in Ukraine, just like I'm in Russia at the moment, if you go in front of the Kremlin and start saying I love Zelensky, the police are going to come along. Just like but in Ukraine, you can't go and protest against certain things. But they're allowed to protest this. So clearly the signal has been given, even if it's just by Ukrainian media protesting it, that it's okay for people to take to the streets and protest this issue. Because if they went to the streets and protest another issue, peace, for example, if they wanted peace, they wouldn't be allowed. If they said, we want peace with Russia, Russia isn't that bad, we want peace, we need to give up territory. You're not allowed to do that in Ukraine. But you're allowed to protest this. So clearly, I think there's certain people who want these people on the streets, absolutely.
Do you think these are foreign actors? I mean, because to be very clear, Ukraine didn't have control. I don't begrudge Zelensky for trying to subjugate these organizations to the presidency, or what do they call it, prosecutor directory, or whatever they call it, or prosecutor general's office, which is effectively under Zelensky. Because Ukraine doesn't have control over these organizations. It was a tool that the U.S. was effectively using to kind of guide either policy or at the very least wrap them on the knuckles when they were doing something that they didn't want. And so them going after these organizations seems to be a way for them to try to solidify their power base. It is wild to me that the articles that are coming out are saying Zelensky is making an authoritarian slide. The man has had, what do they call it? Martial law for the last year and a half, nearly 2 years, and has kept kicking the can down the road where he stayed in power. Nobody took issue with him doing that. But on this, he was trying to be an authoritarian. Why? Because he doesn't like a foreign government being able to adversely influence his politics. Okay, that's not really authoritarian. That's just you being a sovereign state, even though Zelensky, Ukraine is not a sovereign state. Do you think this is coming externally, especially considering that Zelensky, for all intents and purposes, seems to be Europe's guy? Like, I don't get the sense that Europe wants Zelensky to go anywhere.
So I think that there is a battle for control of Ukraine. And I'm not talking about the Russians here. The Russian army is moving forward. So really, with the Russians taking more territory, but there's a battle for control of the rest of Ukraine. If you remember, not too long ago, the British signed a 100-year lease for Ukrainian minerals. 100-year lease, right? But then straight afterwards, so a few weeks later, the Americans did their own mineral deal. So you've got this battle between the British and the Americans. Trump, I think, really did want peace in Ukraine as well. But the Europeans went crazy. It was the Europeans who were all lobbying. The French and the British met up straight away. They were shocked that Trump was going to try and make peace, stopping the weapons. So the Europeans were really pushing, the French and the British particularly, really pushing for Trump to continue the war. So you have the differences of opinions between the old kind of CIA, Democrat, incompetent British and French military leaderships, and you have the MAGA Trump. And now I think, and these anti-corruption agencies that Zelensky's going for, they're American controlled. So whether whether the Americans, as per Seymour Hersh's article saying the Americans want to get rid of him, how do you get rid of him if it's not by force? You try to put political pressure. So maybe I'm just speculating, maybe these anti-corruption agencies were going to put pressure on Zelensky. And let's not forget, if Zelensky will have participated in massive corruption. You don't be president of Ukraine without participating in massive corruption, and many people around him. So, what happens to Zelensky when he gets out of office? Will he go to jail or we don't know.
Hanging from a flagpole.
But likely it is part of that power struggle between these different disparate groups, the Americans, parts of the Americans, the British, the French. That's what I suspect all this is part of.
That's if it's one of those things where it's just the Americans and the Europeans are not on board, then a section of the population, like in Maidan, is not necessarily going to be present for them, if indeed it's just the Americans pushing for it. But who knows? I mean,
how do you Zelensky? How do you if the Americans were, because if you want real change in Ukrainian policy, either you want the Ukrainians to make peace with Russia, or you want Ukraine to up their capabilities, if you like. Ukraine, what I'm concerned about, most worried about, I tweeted the other day that the only patriotic thing that Zelensky has done is stand up against NATO's attempts to push Ukraine to mobilize 18 to 25-year-olds. Both the Americans, the White House under Biden, and the British have both said Ukraine needs to mobilize 18-year-olds. Zelensky's always pushed against that, and well done to him for doing that. Last year, the conscription age was dropped from 27-year-olds to 25 years old. 25. But the Russians are continuing to push. If there's no peace, what's going to happen? A German newspaper the other day published an article, a rather absurd article, saying the Ukrainian army is taking to the front line people who are mentally and physically handicapped. How is this happening? How is this happening? The article asked. Well, because they have no men. They have nobody else but mentally. So what's going to happen if the war continues? They're going to have to mobilize 18 to 25-year-olds. So how do you change Ukrainian policy? Well, you need to change the leadership. And I think that's why the Americans are keen, if Seymour Hersh is correct, to change the leadership. And either to push Ukraine for peace, to make peace with Russia, or to get more people mobilized.
I love how they're asking that outright. How is this happening? Like they're outraged by it. How on earth are they just, drafting handicapped people? It's like, dude, you guys have been pushing them to keep a war going for the last several years where they're just obviously running out of manpower. The average age for the Ukrainians were like in their late 40s, which is mind-blowing. People my age running out there on the battlefield, dipping and dodging.
I went to the gym yesterday for the first time in quite a long time. I can hardly walk today, but it's not. We're joking and laughing, but it is not. It is not funny. But
no,
the Russian army is advancing as well. The Russian army is taking Pokrovsk now, which is a very important city.
Yes,
and there could well be a complete collapse in the next months or years. But whatever way, Ukraine needs more soldiers.
Yeah. I agree with you about the not drafting 18-year-olds. I think his argument was we need people to be able to replenish the population. And if we decimate all of them, then we're not going to have anybody. I also think it's telling that the Europeans were perfectly okay with them drafting the children for all intents and purposes into the battlefield, because I consider an 18-year-old teenager. So there's that. One last question. What time is it? Okay, one last question. Oh, I'm going to let you go. You answered my questions that I put to you. John, thank you for this. I really, there we are. Yeah, Johnny, thank you for this, man. I really do appreciate it. Fantastic answer. You broke this down very well. Johnny Miller, he is a British journalist based in Moscow, spending much of his time covering the Ukraine war, reporting from Donbass. By the way, where can people find you, though?
I think X is my major one. I have a big following. X, Jane Miller, whatever. Yeah.
Very cool, man.
Yeah, great. All right, thanks, Jamal. Always great to see you.
You have a good one, man. Be safe. Thank you. All right, going from one good guest to another great guest. There we are. We're joined with the man himself, Professor Richard Wolff. Professor Richard Wolff is a professor of economics emeritus of Manchester, Massachusetts, Amherst, and a visiting professor in the graduate program in International Affairs at New School University in New York City. He's founder of Democracy at Work, host of their nationally syndicated show, Economics Update. His latest book, The System is the Sickness, Actually, I will ask you if this is your latest book, because you may have another book out. You're a prolific writer, but I'll just read it anyway. The System is a Sickness When Capitalism Fails to Save Us from Pandemics or Itself is available with his other books, Understanding Socialism and Understanding Marxism, at www.democracyatwork.info. Professor, how are you doing this morning? You doing okay?
Pretty well, Jamal. I'm glad to be here, and I'm following, as Americans are, the endless saga of Jeffrey Epstein.
Are you? Are you? I thought for some reason I thought you would be looking at the Financial Times, looking at financial issues.
Well,
I didn't think
I'm doing that too, but
in the sewer.
it's just so engrossing as a kind of everyday live soap opera. For me, it is similar in the economics because it's moving the curtain so you can see behind the curtain what is actually who these people are, how they act, the lying, which is at this point on a scale that is really kind of mind-bending, even for those of us that are used to it. I see much the same in the economics. It's in your face with the Epstein story.
Explain what you mean when you say you see it in the face with the economics. What would be, well, Donald Trump screaming that tariffs are somehow great.
Yes.
Seems outrageous.
The notion that the tariffs are this wonderful weapon that is going to dramatically improve, it is really, it's embarrassing.
Well, Professor,
look, tariffs are an old idea. They've been put on by one country or another for hundreds of years. There's nothing new or dramatic about a tariff. And over that period of time, countless books and articles have been written. More of them have been read by me than I wished I had spent time doing, but I had to teach these courses in the university. I had to make commentary about it. So here's what the literature shows you. And I'm talking about an enormous literature. If you walked into a major university library and you said to the librarian, I want to learn about tariffs, where do I go? They would send you to the 15th floor and you'd say, well, what part of it? And they would say, all of it. There's so much. Well, here's what that literature shows. That sometimes tariffs get you what you want. And sometimes tariffs don't get you what you want. And sometimes tariffs get you the opposite of what you want. So the one thing you can be sure about is that tariffs are not some magic guaranteed way to get you out of a bad economic situation. And we are in a very bad economic situation, which the people who run this country dare not admit. There you go again, like the Epstein story, right? There's obviously stinking mess over there, and we're supposed to pretend, oh, there's no stinking mess over there. We all know there's a stinking mess. We don't know the details of the stinking mess, but we know enough. Well, the same thing with tariffs. So the president the tariffs will do this. He can't know that. Nobody can know that. Tariffs are like a Hail Mary pass in football. It's when you know this game is about to be lost. So we got very little to lose. So let's heave the ball down the field and hope one of the people on our team comes down with it rather than a person on the other team. That's what a Hail Mary pass is in football. Tariffs are a sign that our economy is in trouble. I mean, let's be clear. The President of the United States stands up and slaps in the face every other country on earth. He says to them, I'm going to screw you. We got problems. I'm going to help us, and I'm going to do it at your expense. And I don't care who you are, what you say, what you want. I'm just going to punch you right in the nose. And the people come back and say, You can't do that. You can't have a world in which one of the people in it stands up and punches everybody in the nose. That doesn't make for a good game.
We're America.
And not only that, but you know what's going to happen. If you do that, all of those people, they're going to be angry. They're going to try to, weave and bob and get out of the way of your fist and cut a deal and sell out. But over time, they're building up anger, resentment, rage. And you don't want that at a time when your empire is shrinking. That's the truth of America. We lost the war in Vietnam. We lost the war in Afghanistan. We're losing the war in Ukraine. Come on. Your previous guest, told us again in another way who's winning and who's losing there, right? So the empire is just shrinking, and you're making an enemy out of every country in the world. That's your strategy? Holy mackerel. That's crazy. So I'm here having to say this obvious stuff in the same way that I'm saying there's a stinky mess over there with Mr. Epstein, and what are we all dancing around pretending that it may not be quite so stinky? I mean, what?
Yeah.
It tells you that, I don't want to be a prognosticator of doom. On the other hand, you got to call it like it is. Otherwise, what do you need me for? My job is to say, hey, look at this. Look at this. You can't do this. There's a deal that was made. I don't know if you were intending to ask it, but yesterday, desperate to have a good headline that doesn't make it look horrible, Mr. Trump stood up there and said, I cut a deal with Japan.
Yes.
They're going to pay 19% tariff.
And Indonesia, by the way.
Yes, and Indonesia too. By the way, Indonesia 2 months ago joined the BRICS.
Which is exactly why I wanted to talk about it.
Yes, I mean,
because it seems like it's indeed. Oh, go ahead.
Here's the point. The BRICS is the alternative. The BRICS is where everyone is going to get out from under the United States. Because the United States is acting like a global economic bully.
Yes.
It's as simple as that. Every country has now got an incentive to join the BRICS, to make a nice deal with Russia or China or all the other places to go if you don't want to do business with the United States. And that's what's going on. And I got to tell people, Mr. Trump is giving a gift to every leader of every country. There are about 180 countries in the world if you look at the UN membership, okay? Every one of those leaders, good leaders, bad leaders, and everything in between, they now have a new argument to deal with their own people in their own country about their economic difficulties. Every country has economic difficulties. We're not the only one. China has its difficulties. Russia has its difficulties. But what every leader can now do is blame the United States, because they'll be a part of the truth that these tariffs make it more difficult for the economy in Russia or Spain or Guatemala or any other country you pick, which gives every leader the opportunity to blame the U.S. If you think that that's not going to cost us, then you don't understand how the world works.
I accept that, but in the short term, it does seem like either Japan or, for that matter, Indonesia. I don't know how it's going to work where Indonesia is trying to serve two masters, or in one case, they're going to allow products that, all things being equal, they shouldn't allow into their country. I mean, because that's what he's trying to get with Canada. That's what he's trying to get with Europe. The United States produces very bad food. And in producing very bad food, we die 5 years younger, not to mention the healthcare issue. Okay,
Right.
so Europe, whose food is better,
Right.
I mean, we have more options, but their food tends to be healthier because their country doesn't allow certain things in their food choices. Where Trump is like, they're not taking our big, beautiful cows and our big, beautiful pigs. And they're not accepting our big, beautiful animals. And it's like, because you put so much nonsense in those things.
Yes.
So, but that's not the way he's making the argument. The point I'm making is, if indeed he's able to knuckle Japan, where Japan is now accepting something that they wouldn't typically accept, or Indonesia, where they wouldn't typically accept certain American products, but they're going to accept these American products, it seems to be working. That level of bullying. No, you can't bully China. No, you can't bully Russia. But Indonesia, who's joined BRICS, it's like the largest Muslim country in the world. I mean, a huge country, and yet accepted this.
Let me answer. First of all, you're absolutely right. Indonesia is a very important country, about 280 million people, which means it's only slightly smaller than the United States. It's a huge and a very important country, a part of the Muslim world, absolutely, but also part of the Asian economic totality. Very, very important country. Now, let me explain to you why it won't work even in the short run, right? And this is true for other countries too. What the Indonesians did is say, okay, if you're going to bully us and if you're going to give us a better deal by our letting your stuff come in, we will let your stuff come in. Meanwhile, every Indonesian producer, every Indonesian company that brings in, say, food from somewhere else in Asia, is now going to adjust its packaging. Just to give you one example, here's how the packaging is going to go tomorrow. On the cover, it's going to say, here is rice, or here are canned vegetables, or here is meat that comes from safe, careful production here in Indonesia. And right next to it on the shelf is American excrement. And every Indonesian is going to understand exactly. And so the American stuff can come in, it'll sit on the shelf, it'll gather rust and dust until a new administration comes in and Indonesian politicians can renegotiate the deal. Mr. Trump can make a big to-do. The local government can say, we fooled them. Everybody can say something, nothing changes. And that's only the first one. I'm not going to give you the second one. When it comes to you have to pay a tariff if you come from Indonesia. Let's say Indonesia, I'll just pick something, makes furniture. All right? Because they have a lot of wood there, blah, blah, blah. They make furniture. Okay, so if the furniture comes from Indonesia, it has to pay a 19% tariff. Now the Indonesian furniture company looks around and says, who's got the lowest tariff from the United States? Let's pick it. I'll pick one. This is not true. I'm just making up an example. Let's say it's Panama. Panama. And so the people in Indonesia say, hey, we send our furniture normally on a big freighter, goes through the Panama Canal, ends up in Los Angeles, where they unload the furniture, blah, blah, blah. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to rent a warehouse in Panama. By the way, lots of warehouses in Panama to do what I'm describing. And the furniture will be offloaded from the freighter in Panama, put into the warehouse. There will be Jose, a Panamanian worker, and he will take a brush and he'll put a little bit of yellow paint on the brush and he'll go on the side of the chair. Now it will be a piece of furniture, a chair, manufactured in Panama, where it pays a 10% tariff instead of from Indonesia. This is done all the time. This is how companies have evaded tariffs for generations. They've already done this before. And they're going to do it again. All that Mr. Trump is doing is playing a game designed to make him look big and powerful and tough and putting America number one. Oh boy, this is you know what this is? This is a cheap movie. And you ought to remember, if you're an American, you're in a cheap movie, Jack. You're not out in the real world. You're in a dusty, under air-conditioned theater looking at a cheap movie.
So this is not going to have, so there's not a contradiction between, let's say, BRICS and whatever deal the US makes with these countries.
Joining the BRICS is a commitment by Indonesia to be part of another global bloc. They are doing, by the way, what many other countries are now considering. They're considering whether to do that as well, because it's becoming clearer and clearer. You're going to have to choose. The United States, look at the choice for Indonesia. The BRICS say, join us, and you can become part of this enormous trading bloc that has more than half the people of this planet in it, or you can line up with the United States, who's punching you in the nose. This is not a difficult choice. Of course they're going to join BRICS. They're big and powerful enough to know that the United States dare not do much to them beyond what it's already doing. So what you're watching is, you're watching the teams change. You're watching every country say, we used to be dependent on the United States. If we needed money, we would send a mission to New York or Washington to negotiate a deal of stuff. Now they still send missions to New York and Washington, but those people don't go back to the country they come from when they're done. They take an airplane and they go right to Beijing or New Delhi or Sao Paulo in Brazil, and they make the same pitch. And they basically say, who's going to give me the better deal?
Right.
And you know what? It's the Chinese and the BRICS that keep giving them the better deal. That's why they're going there. They're not going there out of ideology. The BRICS is not a socialist bloc. It's not none of that. It is a bloc of people who see that to defend themselves against the United States, they have to do that. And they made the decision, before Trump hit them with tariffs.
Right.
You know what he's doing? He's just making them realize, whoa, good we did that. That's why it can't work. When it pinches too hard, if they really couldn't have one of the escapes I just went through with you, then they would cut off from the United States. They'll just move. They'll stop. They got the rest of the world. The United States once was the huge dominating influence. At that point, in the 1960s or the 1980s, to turn away from the United States would have been a very risky proposition. And the only people who did it were the Chinese, because the Americans refused to deal with them. Until the 1970s, the United States didn't recognize China. There was no ambassador. They weren't allowed to be. So they didn't even do it by choice. They did it by necessity. But for the rest of the world, they chose to go where they felt their economic well-being depended. And that was the United States. And that's not true anymore. And then when you add Mr. Trump's tariff bullying, well, then it's only a question of how soon can we get out of here? How do we arrange it? And how do we do it with minimal damage? That's what's being discussed in every world capital.
This is somewhat of an expansive question, but you're a learned man. And I, as I told you on more than one occasion, you've affected my workable point of view. So I think you're up for the challenge of it. What has happened? I don't get the sense that this is the way the U.S. worked before. I mean, if you think about it, like, for example, the U.S. is now, China has, 8 out of the 10 best universities in the world. Many of the students who are some of the most technically proficient are Chinese. And the U.S. is effectively saying, we don't want you in our country. So we're kicking you out of our country. We are doing an intentional brain drain. Then the tariff thing is creating a context of, okay, the U.S. who believed in capitalism, believed it up until the point where capitalism wasn't necessarily doing us any favors because a communist country seemed to be doing it better, at the very least using the resources of capitalism to build bridges and roads and buildings and bases on the moon and going into deep space. And these are things that in the 70s and 80s, or let's say in the 70s and 60s, you would say, that's what the U.S. does. We don't do those things. Like we can't even build high-speed rail. California's been trying to build a high-speed rail line for the last 16 years. China's been putting them up like hotcakes. Like, what has happened? Is it lack of investment in education? Have we just decided we don't care about these things? Like, we don't care about childcare. We don't care about the fact that we're dying 5 years younger than Europe. We don't care about the inability to create infrastructure. What am I missing? Because that wasn't the way this country seemed to have operated. We were the shining city on the hill in the way that Ronald Reagan projected, because we did build those things. We did send stuff into space. We did, the internet, all of these technical achievements. What happened? Something happened. Clearly, something happened.
Oh, listen, Jamal, you're right. And I admire it because you're doing it with a kind of poetry. You're like a poet would ask, what the hell happened? And by asking that question, it's very important. You're getting right to the core. So I'm going to give you my answer, but I'm going to tell you first that I've been given this answer for at least the last 4 or 5 years. And I can tell you, I'm an American. I was like you. I'm born here. I've worked here all my life. This is my country. I'm not going anywhere. So I say this with genuine sadness, but I got to tell you, otherwise I'm not true to myself. We are experiencing what other societies have experienced, and it's called the decline of the empire. There is no other way for me to make sense of this. It isn't bad people. None of that. Because the minute you say, well, the bad president. Yeah, but then you have to ask the obvious question. If it's a bad president, how come we put him in that position? How was it possible that we're sitting here, wondering about what Mr. Epstein did on his stinking island? Come on. What a statement about us as a culture. Whoa. But I'm serious. We had a tremendous run. When you talk about those periods of American history, and you're right, in the past, when we built, when we were the shining hill, when we were the advanced march into space, or whatever you look at, it was kind of amazing what this little country, remember, we are 4.5% of the world population. We're a tiny part of this planet. And look what we accomplished. Well, I agree. I grew up in that. I'm older than you. I've been around through that wonderful ride up. But I got to tell you, like every other empire, the ride up is followed by a peak. And then you get the ride down. And the ride down is not fun. Never was. You want to see an example of how grim it is? Go to England. You travel across England, you will see, lots of welfare in London, lots of fancy restaurants, all of that. But the minute you go out into the countryside of England, you see poverty. You see the collapse of what once was England to what it is now. You know what they are? They're our future. They are the sign of a system, an earlier empire that has been going down a longer time. We're early in the process, but if we're not careful, we're going down. There are huge factories in England that are sitting there empty. Well, I know New England. New England is a place where there are huge factories sitting empty, and they have for many years. They once were thriving production. Now they are places for yoga studios, and I'm not against yoga studios, but you get the picture.
Yeah.
We're making do with something that is no longer relevant to us. We have got to understand that, or else we're hopeless. We're not going to solve anything if we can't. Let me use a metaphor. If you're familiar at all with Alcoholics Anonymous, one of the rules when you go into an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting and you stand up and you speak, you have to begin by saying, I'm an alcoholic. That's why I'm here. In other words, you're recognizing that you and the other people in the room share a common problem. And now you're going to talk about how you're going to solve it. By the way, it's been the most successful program to deal with alcoholism that we
Yeah.
have. And all I'm saying is you've got to begin by recognizing capitalism works that way. It goes to a place, it is very successful for a while. Look, again, I'm going to use New England. That's where capitalism in America began. It used to be where all those factories were built, where all the wealth was created. And then capitalism moved. That's why all those factories are empty. They went to the Midwest. Right? What do we call the Midwest now? The Rust Belt, because capitalism left there and went to the South or went to the West. And I got to tell you, then capitalism moved again out of the country. It went to Mexico, went to Canada, it went around the world to China. That's how capitalism works. When you're the place where capitalism is growing, you say, rah, rah, capitalism. I get that. But when capitalism leaves, you can't just sit there scratching your head and say, what happened? Well, what happened is capitalism did its thing. Capitalism goes where the profits are. You and I both know. Why did all those companies go to China? Because it was profitable. Nobody held a gun to their head. No one made them go. The Chinese didn't have the power to do that. General Motors decided it's more profitable to make cars in China than to make them in Detroit. And that's why General Motors sells more cars in China today than it does in the United States. So if you ask General Motors, where are you? What kind of company are you? Are you American? They have to look at you and they have to decide what they dare tell you. But the truth of it is they're already Chinese. That's where their profits are. That's where their future is. Look, I don't want to be the mean guy to tell you what you already know. China is not just a place where you can pay workers way less than what you pay them here. China is also the fastest growing market for what the capitalists produce. That's why they sell more GM cars in China. That's why Tesla has a factory in China, because it wants to sell. The whole world is now buying Chinese cars because they're the cheapest and the best. We can't because we have a tariff. 100% electric cars and trucks from China.
BYD.
Yeah. Three weeks ago, I was in Paris, France, and I hailed a cab to get from one place to another. And the cab pulls up, and there I see, I've never been that close to one before, BYD, that's the cab.
Really?
Yeah, so I get into the cab, and I speak French. My family is partly French, so I know how to speak French. I have since I've been a kid, so I can talk to the cabbie, and I say to him, "Oh," he says, "we buy the BYD because it's cheaper and it lasts longer and it can handle the Paris traffic." Yeah, I had already heard that, but here was a very practical guy telling me, got nothing. He didn't want to buy. He was a big French patriot. He didn't want to buy Chinese. He wanted to buy a Peugeot, one of the bigger French car companies. But he said, "I can't do that. My living depends on that. And the car from China is better, easier to fix, and lasts longer." I just, that's it. He says, "Look around," and I saw many of the cabs were BYD corporate, company cars. And I have to come back and tell stories like this to you because we in America can ride in one. We can't even see one.
I know. I know. I know.
But it's pathetic when you think about it, Jamal. Let me make a point about that. Every American company that produces goods and services, probably, or most of them, have a competitor or more than one in other parts of the world. So if I'm making, I don't know, pens, I'm making pens like this one here in the United States. Well, there are companies in France or in Nigeria who make them pens. The difference is all of us pen companies, competitors, we have to buy cars and trucks as part of our inputs. Trucks to bring the inputs, trucks to take the finished pens and to the warehouse. And we all buy trucks. And we all want to buy electric trucks because they are cheaper to run and cheaper to fix. And we all want to buy the best, cheapest truck, which is a BYD truck. all the competitors around the world are busy buying BYD trucks. Americans can't do it. American companies who would otherwise be competitive with the foreigners we compete with, we can't win that competition because we're forced to spend more on less good electric vehicles made by Ford or GM or Tesla or Toyota because we are denied. All of this is done in the name of protecting the jobs of American auto workers, which it does. But what you have, if you're honest, it's doing that at the price of lots of other people's jobs, which are going to disappear because their employer can't win the competition, being blocked from getting the cheapest, best input. This is shooting yourself in the foot. And you know what? It hurts.
Wow. Professor, fantastic answer. I appreciate that. Real quick, 30 seconds. That's not a policy issue. Like the decline thing, that's not a policy issue. If they took better policy, they would have been able to propagate the system longer. They would have less. I mean, they're passing a bill where they're taking $1 trillion out of Medicaid in order to give themselves tax cuts. That's outrageous. That's outrageous. Like they don't care.
It's beyond that they don't care. It's a blindness. You could look at the decline of the empire as a very serious problem. And what you would have to then do is you'd have to sit down with the Chinese above all, and you'd have to work out a live and let live plan. You have to do that because you're losing. You're not winning. And there's no prospect other than some miracle that I can't even imagine about that changing anytime soon. The United States has been trying to hold back China for 20 years. It doesn't work. So sit down and work out a deal. Stop coming up with one way to attack the Chinese or to drive their students out of Harvard or make it impossible to sell their solar panels here in America. Stop. This is a program of aggressive hostility, and you're not going to win that. Or to say the same thing another way, the only thing left you have is a nuclear weapon. And let me tell you, Jack, then it's over anyway, because they got those too. Yeah. So sit down and work a deal. That is the policy that this analysis suggests they ought to follow.
Professor Richard Wolff, thank you for this. Always appreciate you joining me for this show. Professor Richard Wolff is Professor of Economics Emeritus, University of Massachusetts Amherst, and visiting professor at the graduate program in International Affairs and the New School University in New York City. He's founder of Democracy at Work and hosts their nationally syndicated show, Economic Update. That is a fantastic show, by the way. His latest book is System is the Sickness, When Capitalism Fails to Save Us from Pandemics or Itself, and it is available with his other books, Understanding Socialism, Understanding Marxism, at www.democracyatwork.info. And of course, they can follow you on Twitter at Prof, PROF, Where else can people find you, by the way? Beyond, did I name all the places?
Just about. Democracy at Work is our organization. Democracy at Work, we have a Substack program where you can find us. We're all over the YouTube. We have a website, democracyatwork.info, and that'll take you to all the work we do. But Jamal, you're a modest person. So let me take this moment to thank you on behalf of your guests and on behalf of your audience. Very important, more so than at any time in American history, to have these conversations, to draw these issues out, to allow things to be said that people can chew on and think about, because that's the only hope we have to get out of the mess we're in.
Thank you for that. You be safe, right? You have a good day. All right, going from one great guest to another. Her camera is she's cutting half on me. She's still cutting half on me. Perfect. Much better. How you doing, Sarah? You doing all right?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Apologies for getting to you a bit late. My question was, it went long in regards
It's
to
okay.
answering the question. Yeah, I'm sorry. But thank you for joining me. Sarah Bils, she is former U.S. Navy veteran and current editor for DD Geopolitics, and is a really good friend of the show. And I always appreciate my conversations with her, wherever those conversations go. What the hell is happening in Thailand? And I was a little off kilter this morning. Well, it's not this morning, I guess it's even for me. I dozed off just before the show, and it just discombobulates you. And one of the first few things that I see is, what is the name of the place? It's not Indonesia, it's Cambodia. And Thailand fighting, effectively at war, where Cambodia was launching airstrikes against Thailand. And I'm like, whoa, what the hell? What just happened? From my understanding, somebody stepped on it. Please explain it. D&G Politics covered it. I'm going to let you explain it. It's supposed to be trying to dig into it.
Sure. This is a centuries-old border dispute between Thailand and Cambodia. It's funny because, when I first came across it, it was like a couple months ago, and I was like, what are these two fighting? It was back in May. What was these two fighting about? And it's literally just another iteration of the West drawing borders where they have no business drawing borders. That's exactly what happened. So obviously the French drew the borders down in that area of Southeast Asia, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. And the way that they drew the border for Thailand and Cambodia is they included these temples, these ancient, centuries-old, very revered Buddhist temples. They're included in the Cambodian and inside of their borders, but it's so close to the Thai border that Thailand has started to encroach on these things. Thailand is a Western proxy. They're getting warmer relations with China, but they're not a Chinese ally. They are very firmly in the Israel, United States, South Korea, Japan camp, and Cambodia is in the Russia, China, DPRK camp. So it's just another iteration of this same thing, though it's not really at the point where it is affecting anything outside of that very specific area, and it doesn't have too much potential to get insane. But yeah, it's just another iteration of that. So what had happened was, I believe a Thai soldier stepped on a landmine, which then resulted in reaction to that explosion. And then people started attacking on both sides. Last night, Cambodia was going, last night for me, this morning for them, Cambodia was going crazy. Yes. And then the Taiwanese, the Thai planes actually took off and scrambled. And they actually, the F-16s, I think, struck some targets.
They're doing airstrikes.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys are like crawling around trying to avoid getting hit.
I couldn't believe how fast we got to like that point.
That's my point. And you're saying it's not crazy. It's like this is escalated, like bam, like somebody steps on a landmine and then immediately they're airstrikes.
And it's not even like a non-state militias or anything. These are the state militaries, and the states are like, we're going to war. And at least it's not. It's funny because Clash of Civilizations says, once the wars of natural resources and ideology, political ideology fade away, everybody's going to start fighting wars of civilization. And they are. This is another war of civilization. They're fighting over ancient.
What do you mean by wars? Be explicit. What do you mean by war of civilization?
Well, look, Samuel Huntington, read it, Clash of Civilization. He talks about how the wars these days will be based on civilizations, which means divided amongst ethnic lines, religious lines, nationalities. So we do see that. We're not fighting over natural resources in Israel, Palestine. We're not fighting over natural resources and not really in Ukraine, Russia. They're not fighting over natural resources in Thailand, Cambodia. There's some, but not consequential anything. These people are fighting over ethnic struggles, age old, these sort of nationalistic wars. That's what this is. This is another one of that. I mean, Taiwan will be the same thing. Yes, it's natural resources in the sense of geography, but this is another ethnic sort of clash.
I so disagree with that. I so
Why?
disagree with that. Maybe this is my Star Trek, thing coming out of me at this moment that just bristles at it. But they are fighting over a colonial line that was drawn where they have these kind of religious icons that they want to maintain is theirs.
Yeah, that's an
so they
ethnic.
get to
That's
do
a
it.
clash of civilization, according to
But isn't it?
Huntington. It's a fault line. Yes,
And if you in Taiwan again, would
ethnic.
Taiwan be willing? But
There's
that's
an
not
ethnic
ethnic.
struggle.
They're Chinese.
Are they
I mean, for all
Taiwanese or are
intents,
they Chinese?
they're Chinese. For
To
all
you,
intents and purposes. What do you mean to me?
not
But
to everyone.
they can
Have
define
you ever
themselves.
read Clash of Civilizations? I
I have
suggest
not
you
read
read
Clash
it
of
or
Civilization.
reread it. Yeah, it's very good and very true. And the
I,
reason why
I,
America is not really fitting into these wars is because we don't have a civilization to fight for. We don't have a culture or a cultural
I know,
core.
sir, but these countries are given blank checks, and they wouldn't be fighting these wars if it wasn't for the
Not
blank checks.
Cambodia.
Well, let's go to the ones you mentioned. Taiwan would not be agitating against China if the U.S. didn't give it a blank check. They would be willing to make negotiations and make deals. This
I mean,
clash wouldn't be taking place. Same thing with South Korea
it's been
and
going on
North
since
Korea.
Chiang Kai-shek. What do you mean? This clash
They,
has been going on since before Mao.
I know, you really believe that Taiwan would be agitating against China
No.
if they didn't have
What are you
America as a
saying?
blank check to back them militarily, financially,
I
etc.
didn't say that.
That's the argument that I'm making. I'm saying if you don't have this kind of agitator, this devil in the background
What is that?
telling
That
you and
doesn't
whispering in
negate
your
what I
ear.
said, though. Like Kosovo, Serbia, that's an ethnic war that cannot be done without an agitator.
Yes, and then my point is, if the agitator is not there, those wars don't happen.
So what?
I'm trying to say that these are not clashes of civilizations; these are
Yes, they
agitators.
are. Because the clashes are going to happen anyway, whether the agitator is there or not. They may not happen in the way that they're happening, but they're going to happen anyway.
But see, that's my argument, though. They wouldn't happen without the
Oh, sure they
agitator.
would.
It's the It's like an enzyme.
I mean, just like Donbass in Russia, that happened without any real agitation. Those people were using guns from the Great Patriotic War.
The United States overthrew the government in
That was
2014.
going on in 1990 when Donbass wanted to separate.
Would a war have happened without the overthrow of Ukraine?
Yes, 100%.
No way! So
already
disagree with
happened.
that. People are
Crimea
willing,
and the Donbass had already held referendums for independence twice.
people
Why
are
wouldn't it
willing,
have happened? It would have
people are
happened.
willing to put up with a lot as opposed to going to war.
Correct.
And there's no way to know whether or not. I agree it's a fault line. I don't disagree that it's a fault line. My disagreement is that they're willing to go to war over that fault line. Meaning, I may not like this, but am I willing to go and kill somebody or die for it? Those are two very different things.
I think that you're very mistaken. These people are very willing to die for this stuff. Ask a Serbian, ask a Serb if they're ready to die for a church in Kosovo. They will tell you yes. Right now, yes. Whether America's involved or not, they will put their body in front of that church. This is the same thing as these temples in Thailand and Cambodia. These temples are hundreds of years old. These don't matter.
Kosovo shouldn't exist, for one.
Agreed, but that's not the point. That's still an
I'm
ethnic.
saying
that's
you're
still an
not
ethnic
fighting over
fault line
Kosovo.
between
Kosovo doesn't
Muslims
exist.
and Christians, it's Kosovars and Serbs, Albanians and Serbs. It's still a civilizational fault line.
I guess I'm trying to point out that if you didn't have an agitator pushing the stuff like an enzyme, pushing a chemical
I
process,
disagree. The Balkans have been at war since the Balkans existed. Had no outside agitators. Come on, man. Tribal wars. There's no outside agitators. Come on, these
what do you mean
Bedouins.
tribal wars don't have any outside agitators?
These Bedouins in Syria came with that ideology. They're not being agitated into that.
I know, but during the Assad government, they were not out there killing each other in the way that they're doing now.
Okay.
Meaning, I guess the point. I guess the argument I'm trying to make.
Not disagreeing with me. Just because somebody supplied the weapons doesn't mean that the clash isn't civilizational.
I guess I'm not talking about supplying the weapons. I'm talking about agitators. Agitators. Like, for example, if you take down the Assad government, then yes, there's going to be chaos. And yes, you get the guy saying, "Hey, are you Druze or I'm Syrian?" And he's like, "I didn't ask you that. I asked you were you Druze." Yes, and you shoot the guy. Like, meaning, yeah, you've uncorked the bottle in that case. But countries left to their devices can form and can come together if you didn't
you are
have
so idealistic and you don't
I accept that. I accept it. I accept that. But it is a rule of mine that if you leave countries to their devices, they will grow, develop, they will become better. If you screw with them, they are going to be the worst versions of themselves. That is a core belief. I could be wrong in that core belief. I will read Clash of Civilizations just to
You
hear
have to.
the alternate argument. I'm telling you though, I'm going into it probably not going to believe it. I'm not that cynical. I strongly believe that if you leave countries to their devices, people will come together. I don't think you have this inherent need for people to be evil and mean and vicious, that people can be multiple things. They can be, we have a difficult world that we're living in which case we conform to our environment and we're horrible people in order to make our ends meet. Or you can reach a point in your civilization where our needs are met. Why are we, behaving in this way? We have modernity and we can be better people as a result of having our needs met. Both of those things are legitimate points of view that human beings can take. We just always take the survival aspect.
This is an argument for capitalism.
No, it's an argument for overproduction.
It's an argument.
No.
As long as you give everybody what they need, they'll be satiated and they won't bother each other.
Actually, it's an anarchist argument. It's this argument that
anarchist argument would say that there's no international law, there's no international institutions. It's every man for themselves. It's Westphalian anarchy.
No. I'm not talking about
what we're going to do soon. So
I'm not talking about this old style anarchy. Okay, let's go with socialist libertarian. Okay. Maybe that's a better way to put it, because that's not the argument that I'm making, and that's not the anarchist school that I'm going with. Let's say socialist libertarian, that you can have production and you can produce to a degree where people have their needs met. And that's not, people being billionaires and none of that nonsense. I don't think billionaires should exist. But you don't need billionaires to exist in order to create this kind of system that cater towards workers and cater towards the best interests of human beings. I would prefer people not have to work 40 hours a week. I would prefer if they work less. I would prefer, meaning all of these things can fit within the context of a political model. That's just not the model we have. We have a model based on survival. And in that model based on survival, people behave poorly.
These people aren't fighting for survival. They're fighting over a Buddhist temple.
They love their gods. They love their God. Okay, fair enough. Look, I am a Trekkie. I'm an ideologue on this. I accept that. I'm very idealistic on
civilization. I'll watch Star Trek. I've never seen Star Trek.
Are you serious?
I mean, I know about it. I know the things, but I've never seen it. So now I'll go do my homework too.
I am, yes, I'm an ideologue on this stuff. And
I do believe, but it's nice to have an ideologue because I'm a little bit nihilist and black belt. So it's good. It's a good balance.
Well, I'm a nihilist now, but I think this is prehistory. I just think this is prehistory. I think at some point we will get to a point as a world where either we die together screaming or we reach the point that I'm talking about where
I think so too. And I think that we're more likely to go your way than the other, kicking and screaming and dying. I think we're more likely to go your way.
See, there's a idealist in you.
Well, people don't want to die, Well, the crazy tech bros do. I think they kind of want to die, but people don't want to die. But yeah, so I think it would be more likely that we go your way, of course. But there's things that need to be worked out. There's so many loose ends that need to be tied up. By a lot of it's just exactly how we started off this segment, is that it's just the West having drawn borders where they had no business drawing them, and you mentioned Kosovo shouldn't exist. It's another one. We call them little Israels. We have these little Israels everywhere: Kosovo, Taiwan, Pakistan. These just little Israels. I just didn't know Thailand was a little Israel too.
That shocked me. Shocked me.
Well, even when it came up, I said, I think that the West is on Thailand's side, but I'm not really sure. And then I looked it up and I was like, oh yeah, they're less fully just Western puppet. I had no idea.
I need to hear Brian Burlett, because Brian talks about this, where he talks about how countries need to control.
Is he in Thailand still?
He is, yeah. And he talks about how countries need to control their information space, and how it's not just Twitter or Facebook; it's also school systems, TV, media. It's like that it's almost like a West philosophy gets ensconced in all of that stuff, even it's things that they're taught in schools. And by the time you grow up, you're more amenable to this kind of Western perspective, this Western take on things, that ends up affecting how your political space works. Like he gets into that stuff. Like he lives there, and so he can see it for himself. He's like, you will be shocked at the things that they say and what they consider to be quote unquote lefty or liberals. And
Really?
yeah, like the direction that they tend to push in the political space, and how the king is this kind of
Well, I mean, just full stop right there. The king. Okay, that's what we're dealing
well,
with.
he says the king is a good thing though.
What?
He says in this case
Oh,
the
well,
king is a good thing.
I don't think I don't agree with monarchy.
His argument is that if you didn't have the king, what you would have is a government that is just flailing to the west, that they wouldn't have any kind of
Oh,
let's
okay.
say stable
So his
stability.
argument is that the king kind of keeps them grounded in the
Yes.
the tie kind of. Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yes. He
That makes
makes
sense.
argument
Instead of
that it's stability.
democratizing, instead of kind of westernizing your government. Yeah, that makes
Exactly.
sense. Yeah,
Because I would agree with you also. Like my first thought would have been like, king, what are you talking about? Get rid of that. That's,
Yeah. But I didn't realize that the king was what you're saying. See, I'm thinking king like Saudi, who was there to.
No.
No, okay.
No.
He's more of a bulwark against the United States than like
Exactly.
yes. Okay.
He's
okay,
a
gotcha.
stability factor, political stability.
Okay,
And
okay.
that if you got rid of that king, then they wouldn't have that level of political stability. You would have a country that would effectively have been taken over by Western interests, whereas with the king, less so. It's interesting, like to hear him talk about that stuff, but he lives there. He's far more, astute
Cool. I
to
didn't
it.
know that. So now I'll have to go research the king and stuff like that. I didn't know that. I just, kind of defaulted to, the West loves when they have monarchs. That's great. So much easier to bribe a king than it is to bribe an elected leader.
Yeah, I don't know how instrumental the king is in the politics though. Like how hardcore they're in it. Oh, one of the other issues I wanted to talk to you about, Armenia. So Armenia, Azerbaijan, so there is a rumor, I'm going to call it a rumor because Armenia is pushing back on it saying it's not true, that there's a quarter. Let me see if I can show the quarter.
Oh, Zanzibar.
Yes, just so the audience can see what we're referring to, which effectively would create
Cut off.
very weird anomalies in Iran, Russia, and yes, it would cut Iran off from, I believe, Armenia's access to Armenia in that way.
Yeah.
Also, Armenia and Azerbaijan seemingly keeps telling Russia to F off. Like, all of this. What is going on with this? Because there were other reports that Armenia had gotten closer to Russia because of what was taking place with Azerbaijan. But
It's Pashinyan
give us a
for
breakdown.
the most part. I think Pashinyan is very locked into the West. He's an idiot. I mean, like in the literal sense of the word, he's not a smart. These aren't smart people. I don't think. I mean, we're talking here. I think we think like, oh well, they're elected president. They must be at least politically savvy. I bet analysts know more than Pashinyan knows. And I mean, we're talking about a guy who's now saying, "Oh, I want to jump back into the Eastern Bloc. And I want to be in the SCO." I think he wants to join now, which is like you left the CSTO. What do you want? What do you want with the SCO? And he kind of wants to have his cake and eat it too. The thing about Armenia is he thinks he can play like Turkey. You're not in that sort of geographical advantageous place that Turkey is. They could take or leave you. The thing about these smaller countries is that Armenia, what makes people want to save, and this is, I don't want to offend anybody, but what makes people want to save Armenia is the Armenians. It's Armenianness. It's the ethnicity of Armenia. It's the Christianity of Armenia. It's not because of natural resources. They're in Azerbaijan. It's all ethnic. And the only people that give a crap about that are the Russians. So they've already made a huge mistake. The West does not care about your ethnic whatever struggle or your history in that region. They don't care. They want to make it easier for Israel to get their oil from Azerbaijan, and they want to make it more difficult for Iran and Russia to exist in general. So Murat, my co-host, is probably the best. He knows Azerbaijan and Armenia and Turkey inside and out, but this is not going well because of how poorly politically savvy or the political maneuvering is in Armenia, and they're getting outmaneuvered by Azerbaijan, who's backed by Israel, now Ukraine and Turkey.
Right.
Armenia has seriously effed itself. It's effed. I saw the same rumor you were talking about. The only reason why I knew it was a rumor was because I think they said they were going to name it like the Donald Trump corridor or the
Yes.
American corridor.
Yes.
Other
And
than
they're going to
that,
sell it for 99 years. It's
well,
like 99
in the
years.
first half, not gonna lie. Like, I really thought that this dude was gonna give away the corridor. And I still think that's a strong possibility. You know, he's talked about like, oh, let's go into peace with Azerbaijan, and like, you know, we'll just give them the corridor, we'll give them what they want. It's really crazy. And we're talking about, you know, they used the SMO as a cover to do ethnic cleansing in Artsakh. So
Right.
it's just, and
Wait,
it all
nobody
has
calls
to
it
do
that.
with the
Nobody
Israeli.
calls it that. No, I'm sorry. Nobody calls it Artsakh. It's
Oh, I
Nagorno-Karabakh.
do. That's the Armenian name. I don't call it Nagorno-Karabakh.
Okay. Fair enough. I just know when we said it on a radio station, it's like, what the hell is that? Nobody calls it that.
That's the accepted name. Yes. But Artsakh is the Armenian name. But you know, and they ethnically cleanse it with Israeli weapons, Israeli and Turkish weapons. It's just, you know, it's all connected. And I feel like Armenia isn't in on the joke. Like they're like, oh, we're not. It's not connected to all of that. This is separate.
To be fair, Pashtyan was talking a lot of shit before that war. And he talked that war up as if the Russians were going to, again, blank check. We're back to the blank check thing, where he assumed that the Russians were going to somehow jump to his assistance after he had been working with trying to get closer to the West. Yeah. And Russia was like, if they cross into Armenian territory, we'll get involved. But, you know, internationally, Nagorno-Karabakh is not considered Armenian territory.
Exactly. So you can't totally fault Russia. I would love for Artsakh, Nagorno-Karabakh, to be Armenian, but they're known, and even Pashinyan acknowledged that. That was Russia's issue. They were like, what do you want us to do? You're the one who acknowledged that it belongs to Azerbaijan. Now you want us to like get into a border war for you? Pashinyan has made so many mistakes. I don't know if they're irreversible or what, but they need to have a remigration campaign. Armenians need to go home, or else they're going to get wiped off the face of the earth. And they'll be talking about their little pockets of diaspora in America and Syria and Israel, and it's just a tale. It's a tale as old as time. They've been trying to destroy Armenia.
Do you think they're going to create that Trump corridor?
I will literally. I'll quit. I seriously.
What is that? You quit?
I'll quit this. I will quit. Like, I mean, Trump. I will not be talking about the Caucasus saying Trump corridor. I will literally walk into the ocean before I do that. Could you imagine Iran? They have like this little Trump corridor, like right up against their border.
That's what they were calling it. I mean, I'm trying to find the exact. Where's the exact article? Because they were calling it like literally the Trump something corridor.
Yeah, it's like the Trump freedom corridor.
Screwing over Iran, and I'm like, are you seriously calling this the Trump corridor? I like, dude, are you serious right now? Like, apparently they were talking about a U.S. military contract for 99 years, in which case they may call it that if it is indeed connected to the U.S. military, because Donald Trump is an egomaniac and I wouldn't put it past him for doing it. Armenia, though, is saying, well, that's not true. But I don't know if that's not true, or if they just got exposed before they were willing to let the cat out the bag.
I mean, that's been happening a lot, especially with the Trump administration. But if you look at what's been going on between Armenia and Azerbaijan within the information space, they're just throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. Like, we've got like weird, like, women coming out of the woodwork like, oh, Armenian soldiers hurt me. And then there's like weird stories coming out of Azerbaijan. It's very, the information space in the Caucasus is very poor, very poor.
But just be clear though, this is something that the United States wants.
Absolutely.
And I don't get the sense that Azerbaijan is against it.
No, Azerbaijan is for it. It's the problem is that Armenia seems indifferent to it. Well, Armenia as in terms of Pashinyan, the people, absolutely not. There have been many, many protests. Most of them, ironically, or maybe interestingly, ran by priests. So the Armenian Apostolic Orthodox Church is very much involved, and they do not want to give up this corridor. So that's a positive. and they've been largely peaceful. So that's also a positive. But yeah, it's the Armenians themselves. It just doesn't feel like they have very much political power. It's just kind of like Pashinyan negotiating over like a state.
Yeah.
It's very, very sad.
I remember when I covered that war, and I
2023
was,
September.
yeah, I was shocked by it. And the reason I was shocked by it was because
Brutal.
I remember kept thinking to myself, like, because we had to learn a lot very fast, because none of us had heard about Nagorno-Karabakh. None of us. And we had to like literally just binge that issue for weeks to get up to date on it. And one of the things I came across was, so, all right, obviously Turkey hates Armenia. Right? Azerbaijan was able to get a ton of oil money and dump that oil money into weapons and get those weapons from Turkey, Israel, etc. And I kept thinking, so where's Armenia getting its weapons from? Oh, you mean nowhere?
Yeah.
They got crushed. And Pashinyan was talking a lot of trash up to the beginning of that war, and they got crushed. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, dude, you should not have been running your mouth like that if you did not have the capability.
They really thought Russia was going to come and do it.
They really thought that after all of that time of them trying to work.
They really did. And that's the thing. It was more like, well, you don't really have a choice. And Russia was like, actually, I do, which I think was a mistake now in hindsight anyway. Russia should have just stepped in.
Why?
I do. What do you mean, why? Look at where we're at now. No, it's like that. Now the corridor is just like, it's all full of Azerbaijanis. All the Armenians are gone. You know, it's only going to take a decade or so for people to forget that it even belonged to Armenia at all, because it's going to be filled with Azeris and Turks.
It didn't belong to Armenia. I guess my issue is, okay, maybe I'm being a hard ass. I guess my thing is, if you are working with the Americans and the Europeans, how are you coming back to ask me for help?
Yeah, I don't think that Russia should have stepped in to help Armenia. But then Russia's not very big on like, we control our sphere of influence. They kind of let things play out with, especially with these smaller states.
Yeah.
Whereas the United States would probably step in and say, you're not going to take this corridor. You're not going to well, it wasn't about the ethnic cleansing. It was about the corridor. But Russia's just not like that. They really don't like to get involved like that in people's disputes.
Should they?
I don't know. I think it's a good policy not to. It was probably just me being saying, like, I wish Russia would, like, just my own wishful thinking.
No. I don't mean it specifically for this. Like, all of these were old Soviet states. Should they be more like the United States? You're right. The US would have been like, we're not letting that happen.
I think they should have a stronger sphere of influence. And I think that they're doing that now. Maybe it's too little too late, but I think that they're very hesitant to have such a like an authoritarian backyard like the United States does. They have to be careful with these previous Soviet places. And plus, they're full of spies and corruption now. But yeah, and they're very easy to turn against Russia. So Russia has to be careful they don't overstep their boundaries. But
cracking down
I think
on
that
Azerbaijan
people now are realizing that all of this was such a mistake. All of this, NATO, listening to the West, not breaking up the Soviet Union. I mean, I don't care either way. I'm not a Soviet person, but all of this is just Kosovo, Taiwan. It's all just a mess. The border in Thailand, Cambodia, the border of Syria. It's all Sykes-Picot. It's all just coming back to haunt us. It's all just terrible.
But if they knew that it was a mess, would they be engaged in these fights? Does it make sense? Like, meaning, if I'm aware that all of these things were mistakes, listening to the West on this stuff, am I really, and maybe that's a stupid question. I mean, you're in the situation you're in. You deal with the situation that you deal with, however you got to that particular point. So, yeah. One of the other things I wanted to hit you with, though, was, and this, what time is it? Shit. Not greater Israel. The axis of, I don't know what to call it. It's not the axis of resistance, but it's the axis that Israel has created to contain Iran. Axis of evil, thank you.
Are you talking about the Azerbaijan one?
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
Because because if that corridor took place, one of the biggest countries that would be screwed over is Iran.
Oh, 100%. They'd be done. I've been noticing that axis forming too, and I'd even start to include Ukraine. Now that the overtures, Aliyev is making a lot of overtures to Ukraine. Remember, I'm pretty confident saying that both the terrorist attack in Ukraine or Russia, and the terrorist attack in Iran were done with Azeri coordination, Azerbaijani coordination, if not full-on participation. So, I mean, we're comfortable with that. So now we really have an axis forming. I think it's good in the sense that it lets us know who our enemies are. I'm tired of this Russia tiptoeing through the tulips with Israel. They're not your friend. They're never going to be your friend. They don't care if they're all Russian inside of there. They're Jews first. They're Israelis first. They don't even acknowledge their Russianness. So I think this is good. It's also good to understand where you stand with Turkey at a given moment, because it could change from day to day. But here you understand where you stand.
Yes.
Russia needs to figure out what they're going to do actually in the Caucasus, because Georgia doesn't have really that much interest in really working with Russia. They're fine with Russia. They're good relations, but they don't want to enter into any sort of alliance. Pashinyan does not like Russia. He and Lukashenko do not get along. And Aliyev is always slimy and always willing to work with anybody who's going to grease his palms. It's a very difficult area to get a foothold in, because these people are not to be trusted, except the Georgians, maybe.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, the Georgians had to defend their democracy from.
Don't forget, Israel wants Azerbaijan in the Abraham Accords, and Azerbaijan has reacted to that positively. So that could really isolate Iran. It's this kind of tenfold thing. Okay, let's get the corridor. Let's get Armenia sort of on their back foot. Okay, let's get them some weapons. Okay, let's establish the oil fields. It's like it's incrementalism. And eventually it's like, well, you can't fight us here anyway. We have everything. So.
Well, that's what it seems like is happening.
Exactly.
Instead of, as the axis of resistance.
They take out the people that used to live there. They fill it with new people. Now it doesn't, it's very incremental. It's very incremental. And, you'll see sort of, it's interesting because I don't know if people don't really watch very closely what Russia bombs because they bomb so often.
Yes.
But they've started hitting the cars of rabbis.
Uh-huh.
They've started to hit the oil depots that refine the oil for Azerbaijan, which goes to Israel. They've started tagging a lot of this stuff just to send a message. I mean, they hit the Azerbaijani consulate in Kiev.
Yep.
The other day.
Locking up many Azerbaijanis.
Yeah.
Is it because these people were working against Russian interests?
Yeah, they were working for NGOs. Turkish, British NGOs, yeah.
Okay, because I thought they were part of the mob. Or maybe these things were both the same thing. Same thing. Fair enough.
Nice Venn diagram overlap.
So the thought was that
they were in charge of this NGO it was called like the Ural Caucasus NGO, something about nationalism in the Caucasus and the Ural Mountains, these sort of tribal groups and the Ukrainians that say, from all the way to the Urals. That's kind of that nationalistic sort of ethnic thing. So it was that sort of NGO. So it definitely had nationalistic ties back to the home countries for sure. Yeah. And they were known. One of the guys was known as like a really big mobster, even in Azerbaijan.
So is the reason that Azerbaijan is pissed off is because Russia has started to go after some of these people and some of these groups, especially that mobster?
No, I think that the chicken came before the egg. I think that this is Russia using them to kind of stoke the fire. I think that Russia understands the axis that's forming, especially after the Iran attack. There was a reaction to that. Lavrov reacted to that. They also have that point of contention with the plane that went down. Yes. I've looked at it, and obviously I'm biased towards Russia. I can't really conclusively say that Russia did it, but the whole thing is very suspicious. Russia's still investigating that. Aliyev uses that to kind of as a cudgel over Russia not obeying international law. They're opening up a case in the International Criminal Court about it. So, I mean, this is all sort of not death by a thousand cuts, but it's like I poke you, you poke me, I poke you, you poke me. Eventually it'll probably come to a head.
This is a really big deal, though. I mean, these were Soviet, and I'll let you go, but these were Soviet states. I mean, the idea that Russia is losing, I don't know. If for some reason this feels.
I agree. You look at the Baltics and you're like, well, you're never going to get them back.
Right.
You have to kind of hold on to what you can have. I mean, you need a Eurasian coalition. You need some sort of Eurasian, at least loose knit, like quilt laid over it. I agree. They need to up their sphere of influence, make it more ironclad, and get more involved in their backyard. I understand that they're stretched thin resource wise, but you're over there effing around in Libya and Syria. So I think they need to get more involved in what's going on, especially on their southern border and in the Far East.
How would they do that though at this point? I mean, Armenia is pissed off because they believe that Russia could have jumped in to protect it from Azerbaijan.
Overthrow Pashinyan. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Don't overthrow anybody, please. No more coups.
Actually, that's what it means.
Thought that the religious movements might get almost to that point. The priests were very serious.
I mean, but that's what it means to be involved in your backyard. The United States, when it had kill squads,
means overthrowing. Yeah.
Sarah, I always appreciate these conversations. Thank you very much. You inform me on this stuff, especially in this part of the world, because where sometimes I get confused.
There we
like,
go.
okay,
Look, I can do this thing. There we go. Right? Isn't that it? Live long and prosper.
Wait, said it. Live long and prosper.
That's Star Trek. Live long and prosper.
Oh, yeah, that's Spock. Yeah, that's Spock. Live long. Are you seriously going to watch? Look, if you're going to watch the one that you may gravitate more towards. See, people like me who've watched all of them, with the exception of Discovery sucks. If you ask anybody who's an old Trekkie, like from the very beginning, they will give you an impression of the next generation Star Trek. That is usually what is in their minds when they think about Star Trek, because they would say, we're not a military organization, we're a part of exploration, the military is very little of what we do. Okay, but it didn't end up that way. Because they weren't a military organization, when they actually had to fight.
Wasn't Star Trek about like a utopian socialist society out in space? No wonder why you have such a rosy outlook.
Well, they did have that utopia for a good, let's say maybe 100 years, give or take. And then Star Trek started to deal with reality.
Okay.
Meaning, like, you can be this kind of loving life if your technology is, 100 years above the other races. You have these huge ships that are very bright in color and everything else. And then you meet the Borg, and the Borg kills like 200 of your ships with one cube. And you're like, okay, we need to do something different. And then you meet the Dominion, and you end up in a full-blown war where billions are lost in the war for the entirety of the sector. Like, the character of the organization changes over the course of the series, because it has to, just because you started saying, what does it look like when these fantastic human beings who have all of their needs met are put up against people who are not that fantastic, who are willing to do, cut steel and everything else. There was one of the episodes where Picard, one of the main captains, get tortured. That is a hard episode to watch. But they got darker, especially when they got into a full-blown war. But you understood why they got into the war. It wasn't just in Deep Space Nine, oh my God, you're at war. It was, you are edging around borders. It became a border issue. And in Star Trek, they're like, hey man, you can't tell us where to go. Okay. Is that true? That wasn't true. Deep Space Nine is probably the best of the series. Next Generation is probably the one that people remember the most in regards to if they think of the character of Star Trek. So one leads into the other. I don't know which one you want to start with first, but it's a fantastic series. It's a fantastic series. You're going to look at this and you're going to be very cynical looking at it. You'll be like, oh, these people have lost their effing minds. Especially in the first one. You're going to be like, these people are in a cult. What's wrong with these people? By the time you get to Deep Space Nine, it becomes like, okay, that makes more sense. Cisco's acting more sense, because at that point, they're getting closer and closer to war. And how does perfect human beings act when they get closer to war? Like every other human being acts when they're in a war. So, Sarah, and the Clash of Nations.
Civilization. Close enough.
Clash of Civilizations. Okay.
It should be free online. Or just ask ChatGPT to give you the too long don't read.
Too long don't read?
Yeah, tell her to give you a summary of Clash of Civilizations.
No, I'm gonna read it.
Yeah, it's really great. I just reread it like a month ago, and I was like, oh, I'm so glad I reread this right now.
No. If you are going to subject yourself to Star Trek,
okay, this is.
And again, it's watching it when you're a kid and watching it when you're an adult, especially when you get into politics, are very different animals. It becomes very political in many of the episodes, but they are a bit Well, the conversation we had earlier today. If you leave people alone, they're going to be better people. They're going to be great people. That's
I'm the opposite. I think if you leave people alone, they're going to turn into like Lord of the Flies.
Well, this is a Rick and Morty episode where they're like, we're going to liberate these people. Like, and it was like people started taking off their shirts. It was like, well, I have nips and I don't have nips. And then one group that had nips started. It's like, dude, just because you let people be free, don't mean they're going to make the right choices, right? Sarah,
Flip that part of you going, I have nips and I don't have nips. Just you.
It was an episode where the guys were taking off the shirts. It's like they liberated this country or this world. And after they liberated the world, it was an alien species that had dominated the entire planet by mind control. And the moment they took off the mind control, one guy rips his shirt off. He's like, I don't have nips. And another guy rips his shirt off. Like, I do have nips.
Just you saying it that makes it so. I don't have nips.
It's funny as all hell. It's funny as all hell. Sarah, you are fantastic. Thank you for this, Sarah Bils, former U.S. Navy veteran and current editor for DD Geopolitics. Have a good one, okay? All right. We have come to the end. I always enjoy talking to Sarah. I realize I don't do well interviewing Sarah, so it's better to have a conversation with Sarah. That's where it turns out better. She's cool people, man. She's cool people. I like talking to her. Let's see. Who do we have? I get the sense that they're going to be people very pissed off at Daniel Lazare. They're all every show. You guys are pissed off at Daniel Lazare. I love the guy. I think he's great. Again, I don't have to agree with my guests. That is not the objective. Like, it's not like you're watching rando interview channel and they just say yes to everything that the person says. What the fuck of a point of a channel is that? Either I agree or disagree. I don't have to agree. In fact, some of the most interesting episodes is when I don't agree. The interviews I like the most, in some cases, are the ones I don't agree with. I love talking to Kim Iverson. Love her to death. Attractive, brilliant, all of that stuff. And she has a penchant of being willing to go where angels, fear the threat. Like, she would go and plow into an issue knowing full well she's going to get hate for that issue. Love her to death. And we argue like cats and dogs. Every time she comes, argue like cats and dogs. I don't need to agree with my guests. And I got to be honest with you. It is usually more advantageous to not. It just is. Like, from the standpoint of donations and stuff like that, people get fired up when there's a fight taking place. I bring on people that I enjoy talking to and that I can get information from in order to understand issues. There will be people who come on where I just completely disagree with. But I don't have to be an asshole to them, especially if it's a conceptual disagreement. It's not like we're talking about killing kids, right? Like, it's not like we're having a conversation and the guy's like, yeah, I think it's perfectly okay to kill kids. It's like, okay, you're out your fucking mind. That's not a conversation I'm willing to have. I'm not even willing to give that person airtime. But from the standpoint of these topics that come up, I like hearing difference of opinion. I don't want to have an echo chamber. I like having somebody to say something that I didn't think of. And I have to think about it like, hey, is that guy telling the truth? Do I buy that? Do I think that's true? Because like anybody else, you can get wrapped into your own pet theories of what's taking place around the world. I'm perfectly okay with having a guest that comes on and gives food for thought, whether I agree with the food for thought or not. So I strongly suspect, though, there will be people bitching at Daniel Lazare. I can feel it in my bones. I haven't even looked at these messages, by the way, but I can feel it in my bones. Raphael, okay, I'm going to say Lepe, oh man. What is this? Anciano? Jamal, do you know Pam Bondi is a victim of Epstein now? A picture of a 12, 13-year-old girl sitting on Trump's knee looks like her. Again, rando white girl. Very attractive, by the way. Pam Bondi is extremely attractive. It should be a crime for Donald Trump to surround himself with women that look like because he does it on purpose. He obviously does it on purpose. That's a Fox News thing, right? Where it's like, we're going to show women and we're going to show their legs and they're going to be in skirts. And those skirts are going to be so that people can see it because old men are just going to watch it. It's going to up our ratings, even if they're not paying attention to it. It's like, it's that, right? where Trump is like, I'm going to be surrounded by beautiful women, and I'm going to have gold escalator, and I'm going to have this, and I'm going to have that. It's so boring. And I don't mean boring. It's just like, how small is your dick if you have to try that hard? It's that. It's like you're trying so hard to project this image, but it's just an image. Like, I would prefer competence more than anything else. Competence is a better fixture. If you can get both, great. I would prefer competence as opposed to this kind of patina of Las Vegas or Hollywood, where it's all lights and it's all shiny and it's all peacocks. Okay, if that's what you need to do, but that doesn't tell me anything about you, short of, there's something that's a level of hubris and something wrong going on there. Daniela Modus Cutter. Brian Berletic lives in Thailand. Yes, so maybe he would understand better what is happening. Yes. And I am going to hit him up about it, by the way. I guess in the morning. What time is it now? Yeah, it's like 9:30 for Brian. I am going to hit him up and ask him about it, what's going on. But Sarah did give a pretty good breakdown. I mean, the question becomes, is there something beyond it being a border war? It's that, like, yes, there's a fault line that's in there, but is somebody agitating the fault line? Like, for example, Kashmir was a fault line for Pakistan and India. It's been a fault line for a while. Again, going back to drawing the lines. But it was the killing of all of those people that created the agitation for the war that took place between India and Pakistan. Did Pakistan do that? Or were the terrorists being paid by some other entity? Again, it's that part, right? If you talk to India would say, well, Pakistan obviously did it. If you talk to Pakistan, they would say, well, we didn't do it. India is false flag. It's like, okay, first, I don't believe for a moment that India would murder 20, 30 of its own people in order to make you look bad. I don't buy that premise. Is it possible for somebody else, a rogue actor, to be involved in order to create divisions between ultimately China and India, which it became because they were using Chinese weapons? Maybe. So I don't know what is the underlying thing, or if this is a hammer, it's just a hammer. So I would hit him up about it, though. I would definitely do that, Daniela. Who else? Rolf Jam Radio. One question is, if Obama was the one who released the Jonathan Pollard, what do the Israel government have on him to make it happen during his administration? So I think Daniel's point on this one gets more solid. The U.S. had been getting closer and closer to Israel. Whereas if you look back during the Nixon administration, Richard Nixon was very clear. Look, man, there are situations where the United States and Israel are not going to be one-to-one. I understand why they think that what's good for one is good for the other. But as an American president, that is not my job. That is not what I need to do. There are times where I need to tell them, no. We are a long way from Richard Nixon. We're a long way from Richard Nixon. And even from the context of attacking Iran, many of the presidents will tell Israel, no. Obviously, Donald Trump said yes. So you see yourself doing the slide. I mean, think back to Syria now and Obama's role in Syria versus Ronald Reagan's role in Iran-Contra affair. If you remember, and I use this example because I think it's so indicative of the slide that takes place, slide to the detriment of this country. Ronald Reagan, during the time of the Gipper, I remember one of my first political memories is watching, this kind of old style TV with the presidential seal coming on and Ronald Reagan looking into the camera. And he says an astonishing thing, that for all intents and purposes, he explains the Iran-Contra affair. He says, I didn't know anything about it, but I'm the Gipper. Buck stops with me. And it was a firestorm. There were hearings. There were people who were pissed off. It was like, oh my God, I can't believe the United States is doing this. We're paying kill squads. I can't believe we're doing that. That's not what we do. We're love and light. We're a shining city on the hill. That is not what a shining city does. We don't overthrow governments. That's stuff that the communists do. We don't do that. We're better people. It's like, no, you do that. You do that. You're better at hiding it. You're better at the propaganda. But yes, Ronald Reagan was selling weapons, despite the fact that Congress passed the Bolin Act, telling him not to do that in order to get money for kill squads in South America. Fast forward to Obama. Obama spent billions of dollars to overthrow the Syrian government, and nobody cared. Nobody cared. Tulsi Gabbard comes on network TV and says, Jake, we're supporting terrorists, and nobody cared. And then the New York Times, always a day late, dollar short, writes an article after the fact talking about the billions of dollars that Obama spent to create kill squads, or effectively terrorists, to try to overthrow the Assad government. Trump comes in and says, I'm keeping the oil, meaning they took decades to overthrow the Assad government through one presidency after the next. I'm trying to point out how there's a slide where initially it's a really big deal. And then at some other point, less so. The Israel thing is the same, right? They ingratiated themselves further and further into our political space, in which case, can you really foresee Trump saying no? I mean, for God's sake, Donald Trump had to throw his body to protect them after they attacked another country during negotiations. Obviously, this was not necessarily going to go well. If Iran survived, it didn't go well. Now, I guess the point that I'm making is, what did they have on Obama? You didn't need to have anything on Obama. Democrats get a ton of money from Israel. AIPAC should be considered, what's the AIPAC? Many of those organizations should be considered foreign agencies. They should be under FARA, full stop. Nobody that is in the US government or working for the US government should be able to be a dual citizen, full stop. That should be easy, especially working for Israel when their priority seems to be Israel more than the United States. I mean, for fuck's sake, the guy's wearing an Israeli uniform walking through the halls of Congress. So I guess my point is, the influence is there at this point. It's there, like it's significant. And it got more and more significant year after year after year. I didn't think you need to have anything on Obama. And I think that's kind of the argument that Brian is making on some level. Not Brian, Daniel is making. He's like, dude, Israel had ingratiated itself to such a degree into our political space that you didn't need to have Bill Clinton saying nasty stuff to what is her name? It'll come to me in a moment. It's like sniffing coke off her ass or whatever. It's like you didn't need them to have that in order to try to knuckle Bill Clinton to do that. I disagree with him on this stuff. The fact that stuff is in courtroom documents, the fact that Monica Lewinsky is reporting this, it's like, okay, did she just forget what Bill Clinton told her? That would be weird. But teach his own, right? Teach his own. I hope I answered that, Rough Jam. That's a lot of wood to chop. I'm trying to make the point that you might not have needed anything on Obama short of just the level of influence of Israel in the politics. GP became a YouTube member. Welcome to the family, GP. Welcome to the family. I'm the well-dressed nerd, art by Brave. Holy shit, Daniel Lazare just scrambled every brain cell I own, laughing my fucking ass off. Right. Okay, so I'm not the only one, right? Like, I'm sitting here listening to Brian like, whoa, what? Because again, but this is what I like. This is why I love Brian. Honest to God, this is why I really like Brian when he comes on. Him and I argue all the time, and I always enjoy the arguments. I listened to that, and I thought to myself, does he have a point? See, the issue with Epstein for me, and the issue for Epstein that has always been the issue for me, and Brave, if I'm not mistaken, when we were talking on the show, on the radio show, this came up. Where are the Johns? Where are the Johns? Because look, if you're telling me that this guy's an apex predator, he's been feeding children to kids, okay, that's pretty heavy shit. That's pretty heavy, right? He gets popped. And the first thought is like, okay, where are the Johns? Where are the people he were feeding these kids to? Where are they? And they never came up. And then I started thinking to myself, is this a conception? Like, is this something that people have gotten to their heads what they didn't exactly have the evidence for, but this is what they ran with? Because again, where are the Johns? I was stuck with that question. I'm just being honest with myself. Where are the Johns? And the Johns never came up. They just were never there. And then you could say, okay, well, this guy's in an intel. And so on some level, they're protecting him. And then it's like he gets whacked. And then it's like, okay, well, Occam's razor, fair enough. But really, Occam's razor in this. You're telling me that the guy who was on suicide watch, both cameras were down, both guards were narcoleptic or weren't there. They were supposed to be checking on him every, 15, 30 minutes or whatever. And the one camera that did work apparently didn't see anything. And yet he offed himself. Okay, that's pretty astonishing, right? Like, is Occam's razor, yep, just a series of coincidences? Is that where we are with something like that? Because it's almost like, pick the most simplest option. The simplest option is that's a lot of shit to go wrong on one night where a guy offs himself. And then even when they had him in a prison cell, and it's like he tries to kill himself, and the guy, Taglioni, sleeps through it like a baby. Okay, again, is the simplest option that Taglioni is a hard sleeper. And Epstein is bad at trying to off himself in a corner with a belt. The simplest option to me, this seems like a lot of coincidences. And when you start adding these coincidences up, it becomes somewhat indicting. Now the catch becomes, where are the Johns? And if indeed Epstein was just a pedophile, and Ghislaine Maxwell was just getting him little girls, I suppose it's possible. But you have a lot of wood and a lot of water to dump out that boat now. Because the argument that was made going all the way through with people like Acosta saying this guy's intelligence. Okay, again, he said that. That's not me making that up. That's not me thinking that. That is literally what Acosta said. Acosta gave him a sweetheart deal. So the argument of, well, we would have gotten him a sweetheart deal. He did get a sweetheart deal. He did. The book would have been thrown at him under normal circumstances. But instead, he gets to stay in prison for a period of time. He gets to go home during the weekday to work and all this other stuff. Nobody gets the deal. So if the argument is, well, the simplest thing is true, the simplest thing is Acosta said he was intel. I'm going with that idea. He's intel. It might have been that his time just ran up at the time where I didn't take my socks off, Dershowitz, or didn't take my underwear off. I don't remember which one. I said, didn't take my underwear off, I didn't take my socks off. Whichever. The man who also got massages by Epstein girls. Do I trust him? No, I don't. I just don't. Dershowitz is a genocidal supporter. No, I don't trust him. Nor do I trust him on the issue of Israel, where he could very well be protecting Israel. Because if indeed Epstein was working with Mossad, it is very possible that Dershowitz would not necessarily want to out the fact that Mossad was supporting a massive child rapist and everything that falls down from that meaning. So no, I don't support or believe in Dershowitz on this. Dershowitz has every reason to lie if indeed Epstein was working with Israeli intelligence. This idea that, well, I could have gotten him a better deal. I don't care about that. Maybe true, maybe not. But that's what is the word for it? That's a supporting argument. That's not a data point. That's not information. That's just an argument to try to solidify a point without it necessarily having a logical continuation to it. Meaning there's nothing to back that up. That's not data. That's not information that bolsters the point. That's just you trying to rationalize something. Those are different things. If indeed he is or was working for Mossad, and if indeed Dershowitz, who is a lunatic on the issue of Israel, I didn't take my socks off or whatever, would he tell that he was working with Mossad? Would he really tell that, knowing what that would look like from the standpoint of Mossad backing somebody who's feeding children to grown men for issues of leverage? No, I don't think he would tell it. I don't believe he would tell it. So while I appreciate Daniel's argument, and while I agree with you that he scrambled my brains in that interview, it's like, whoa, well, why do you think that? Where are you getting that from? I give him credit, like never mistaking a coherent argument for a true argument. It's coherent. I just disagree with the premise. I just disagree with some of the points. But Brave, yeah, agreed, Brave, agreed. Sir Mike Salat. Ben Swan worked for CBS Atlanta. I got fired for doing a segment on Pizzagate. If it's nothing, why fire him? Because the shit was nothing. That's why you fire him. I mean, imagine somebody saying, hey, they're doing some kind of demonic stuff with kids in this pizza shop. And you go and do a story about it. If it's nothing, why shouldn't you be fired? Think about what you're saying. That he fucks it up so royally, a story, but they should keep him on for screwing it up so royally and humiliating the network. I hope you understand. I don't understand your point on this, Sir Mike Salat. If it's nothing, he should be fired. That's a big deal. You're going after a shop, a business owner in a particular city, saying that this guy is doing some of the worst things on the planet. It's like, if it's nothing, why fire him? Because it's nothing. And your job is not to produce. I mean, it's less than nothing. It's even worse than nothing. Because you've indicted somebody for something that they shouldn't have been indicted for. So I disagree with you on that one. If it's nothing, we'll fire him. He did work for RT. Please interview. Yes, Ben Swan did work for RT. I don't think Ben Swan would join me for an interview. He didn't just work for RT. He was trying to restart RT. Because, you know, one of the things that took place, Sputnik and RT were different. They were like sister companies, but they were different. They were run by different people. We were far more resistant to going off air. The first time around when RT went off air, there were shenanigans at foot. I just said it that way. They were trying to re-bring it back to the States before all of the stuff with the parent companies took place. Swan was the guy who was trying to take that over and bring it back to the States. So yeah, I'm aware of Swan. I've seen him. He's very polished. It's like a Ken doll of sorts. But yeah, the Pizzagate thing was a fuck up. Just call it what it is. Just call it what it is. Call it what it is. Bernie Sanders. Is that Mallory? Malloy. I go with Malloy. Jamal will have 1 million subs by November 2028. Screenshot this. You're the man, dude. From your mouth to God's ears. That would be nice, kind of, I think. I'm not sure. The thing is, the bigger you are, I give an example. Candace Owens right now is being sued by, of all people, the French President Macron. Think about that. You're suing a YouTuber. You are suing a YouTuber. Why is he suing a YouTuber? Macron is suing Candace Owens because Candace Owens said his wife is a man. Now, to be fair, if you see the punch that she gave Macron, you will think she is a man too. Macron looked like he shot that. He did one of those numbers. That's pretty amazing. But apparently it's gotten under his skin so much that you keep calling my wife a man that he is now taking her to court over this issue. Candace Owens not backing down, doubling down, effectively saying, well, we'll see discovery. That's some shit though. But see, that's what fame gets you, right? Like, if I say that, nobody cares. If I'm at 65,000 subs and I say something like Macron's wife was a man, nobody cares. I'm not being sued for that. If you're Candace Owens, you're being sued for that. You're being sued for that. So maybe I am happy with 100K at the very least to start off because I want my award. But from your mouth to God's ears, I want to get that 100K before I drop dead. Sarah is my favorite based girl. Alexander G, I think Sarah's, yeah, she's one of my favorite people to talk to. There are a few. I mean, I like talking to, but to be honest, I don't have that many women come on the show. I would love to have more women come on the show. I think I'm easy to talk to. Sarah, Margaret, Kimberly, they are easily my favorite women to talk to. They are great. I always enjoy talking to both of them. See, I realize with Sarah, it has to be a conversation. It can't be an interview. An interview doesn't work. It just doesn't work. We pop off fast with each other. And so there will be overtalk. There will be Stuff just pops off fast. It's a lot of energy when you're having that conversation. I enjoy that personally. I enjoy it. I'm a fast talker. So it's easy to do that with somebody else who's also high energy. So no, man, I always enjoy those conversations. She's awesome. She really is. Wandy, USA, can tout just call Sarah at home? What? Can you just call Sarah at home? Wandy, what is your issue with Sarah? What is your issue with Sarah? Oh, the way I have a conversation with Sarah. I like talking to Sarah, and I think we have good conversations. And believe it or not, there's some people who like that level of non-formal interview style where you just talk to the person. People do like it. And believe it or not, I like it. And no, I can't just call Sarah at home. That would be weird. I'm calling her in order to talk about all of these issues. And we talked about several issues. I mean, we hit Azerbaijan, Armenia, we hit Cambodia, we hit, what was the other one? Thailand, we hit Russia, we hit the effect that it was going to have on. We had a lot of stuff in that hour. Just, back off, Wandy. Back off. Brother B, Daniel is a Zionist, Israel apologist. Oh, Jesus, for fuck's sake. He was completely biased. He believes that Israel can do no wrong. Why do you think that? Oh, Brother B, you got to give me more than that. Why do you think that? That is you accusing him of stuff. That is not evidence of anything. That is you accusing him of stuff. I've spoken to Daniel plenty of times. That is not the perspective that I've gotten from speaking with Daniel. I'm just telling you it's not. It's not. Under no circumstances is that the perspective I've gotten from speaking with Daniel. Again, man, just because somebody has a different point of view with you on certain issues, and I don't even know if he disagrees with you and Israel on this. Like, meaning Daniel would take the same perspective that Israel is committing a genocide. So I don't know what this argument you're making is. He may take a contrary point of view than you, but that's not because of Israel. That's because he's not cynical. What's the word I'm looking for? He's skeptical. That's all. He's been around long enough where he's seen these stories and like, this stuff is BS. The Russiagate thing, for example, and he used the Russiagate thing as a direct allegory in order to deal with the Epstein thing. So that's not him. I understand your point. You're trying to say that the reason why he doesn't want to say the Epstein thing is legit is because he's trying to defend Israel. I don't think that's true, though. I'll be straight with you. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's his rationale for it. I think his rationale is exactly what he says rationale is. No, I think this guy was just a pedophile, and that they have added so much to it that now they're stuck with it in a political sense. I think he's wrong on that. But I'm not going to jump to conclusions that the reason he's wrong is because he's trying to defend Israel. That's not sensitive yet. I've spoken to for Daniel for 7 years at this point. I don't get that perspective. Brother B. I do appreciate your take, but I just disagree. Hung Meow. That is the funniest name in the world. That is the funniest name in the world. Hung Meow. Can you get Dr. David? Oh, dude, you're going to make me say this name. Awalawalu. He is great. I don't know who Dr. David Awalawalu is. I will look him up, though. And you're going to force me to say butcher his name on Library, and they're going to call me racist. Butchering his name. That racist motherfucker couldn't get his name right. Awalawalu. I think it's Awalawalu. I'll go with that. I will try. I'll reach out to him. I'll see if I can find him, see what he does, and I will reach out to him and see if he would be willing to come on the show. All right, guys. We have come to the end. What if Hung Meow is the person's real name? Rupert Fellows, it would still be funny. It would still be back to make it funnier, even, right? When I used to work at my company, I used to work at a software company. One of the guys that we used to work with was named Dick Hard. No bullshit. That was his real name. That was his real name. And it's like, why? Why would you name him that? Why would you name him that? Why would you do that to your kid? Why would you do that to your kid? Why would you do that to your kid? Okay. One USA. Sarah is like Ritter, a closeted scientist. Oh, what is this closeted scientist stuff? She said, whoever won't remember in 10 years. She feels the same way about genocide in Palestine, not Gaza. Sarah's like Ritter, a closeted Zionist. She said, whoever, I don't know, maybe I'm getting that. Whoever won't remember in 10 years, she feels the same way about the genocide in Gaza. Oh, I see. She's trying to say that people won't remember the genocide in Gaza in 10 years. Okay, I don't remember her saying that. Maybe I missed that. I don't remember her saying that. Nor do I think that's true. I'm not even sure if Israel would exist in 10 years. I mean, but in 400, maybe 200, maybe 10. That sounds a little much. She said it about Armenia. Oh, but that's not her saying it about Israel. I mean, come on, that's not her saying it about Israel. How you calling the closeted Zionists for saying it about Armenia? Come on. Dude, Wandy, Sarah opposed the Ziopaths. Yes, she hates those Nazis. Hates them. So no, she's not a closeted Zionist. I don't know where y'all get the stuff from, man. I don't know where y'all get the stuff from. I don't know why you dislike Sarah. I honestly don't. Yes, we tend to have conversations. Yes, it's very high energy and it tends to be over the place. But we do hit our points. And in this case, we actually hit them cleanly, far more cleanly than we typically do. We, Azerbaijan or Thailand, Cambodia, first subject. A box around it. Move to the next subject. Meaning usually we're all over the place when we're talking. I enjoy talking to her, to be honest. There's some people who are easier to talk to than others. She's one of those people who are easy to talk to. She knows her stuff because they cover the stuff constantly. And so there'll be subjects where I just sit here and listen because I don't know enough about. There are other subjects where I would pry because I want to know more. And there are other things where there are more conversations because you're talking to someone who's politically inclined in a way that you can't talk to other people. Like, there is no one to talk to about politics in this way that knows it and that breathes it, where you can have a conversation with and you can laugh about it, you can talk about it, etc. And in many of the cases where I'm talking to people, we're doing interviews. Like if I'm talking to Mark Sloboda, that's an interview. I may inject certain things, but that's an interview. Mark is feeding information in a direct sense. It's more formal. If I'm talking to most of the people, it's more formal. Dr. Richard Wolf, it's gonna be more formal. So at 10 o'clock at night, yes, I enjoy talking to her. She's fun to talk to. And she knows her stuff. We jealous. Oh, don't go there. 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 Kayla, don't go there. Sarah isn't a Zionist. You only have to listen to her. Yeah, she's not a Zionist. I don't know where you get that from. I don't know where you get that from. I don't know where you get that from. You owe her an apology, Wandy. You owe her an apology. I don't know what Ritter is, but I know Sarah's definitely not. Sarah's definitely not. All right. I am going to end this. I'm going to say like, and Wandy, I love you to death. So no shade is being thrown. No shade is being thrown. I'm just pointing out she's not a Zionist. All right. I'm going to say like. I'm going to say share. I'm going to say subscribe. I want to thank all of you for joining me. I need to book Red Access Ad Protector. Yes. Well, I'd protect anybody if I think, being unfair to them. You guys have a fantastic rest of your day. And I will see you guys bright and early tomorrow morning. Thank you, Charles G. Kim Iverson was at her best during H. I don't know what H is. By the way, Kim will be on in August. I'm thinking about having a birthday party or a birthday marathon or something. I don't know. It's like a fundraiser from a birthday. Kim would not be able to come on because apparently she's going to be on Labor Day, but she will be coming on at the beginning of August. So she will be coming on at the beginning of August. Good night for the people down under. Yeah, it's 12, like 1 a.m. People in Australia, I think they're 2 hours ahead. All right, guys, you all have a fantastic day. Scamdemic, I don't know what that is. I don't know what scamdemic is. She does not. Wandy, oh, Wandy. Wandy. That's unfortunate you believe that, Wandy. It's unfortunate you believe that. All right, I'm going to end this. I'm going to say like. I'm going to say share. I'm going to say subscribe. Jamal, what's the name? Karat. I don't know who will be a good guess. Karat. Oh, you mean during COVID? Oh God, man, the wars that her and I had during COVID. Oh, the wars, the fights. Jesus Christ, there were some fights during COVID. Hug me out, get some sleep, Jamal. I can't get sleep. After I leave this, I'm gonna have to cut videos. I'll be finished around 3, 4 in the morning. So that is my life. Kim and I would fight these vicious wars. When she would come on the radio station, it would invariably go to COVID. Oh God. Yeah. That woman is just fire. All right. I'm going to say like, share, subscribe. You guys have a fantastic rest of your night or rest of your day. And I will see you bright and early tomorrow morning, providing nothing takes place. Have a good one all. Be safe. 201, signing off.